I am making this announcement in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, being Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, Laws of the State of New Jersey. The Planning Board Secretary has prepared a schedule of this meeting of the Planning Board of the Borough of Kenilworth for the year 2022 and has posted a true copy of this schedule on the bulletin board located at the front entrance of Borough Hall and has mailed true copies of this schedule to the local source, the Star Ledger, and is maintaining a copy of this schedule in Borough Hall. Accordingly, the notice requirements of this Open Public Meeting Act have been satisfied in regards to this meeting. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paterno?
Here.
Mr. Finestrella?
Here.
Mr. David?
Here.
Mr. Clementi? Here. Mr. Pantina?
Here.
Mr. Mazzio?
Here.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Here.
Mr. Clella?
Here.
Mr. Scuderi?
Here.
Mr. Herbalario?
Here.
Mr. Demondo?
Here. Can we have a motion for the approval of the February 10th meeting minutes? So moved. Moved by Mr. Who moved? Ladati. Mr. Ladati, seconded by Mr. Demondo. All in favor? Aye. Any communications, Kathy?
None, Chairman.
Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move to application 2103, Joseph Rizzo, for the resolution. Mr. Rego?
Yeah, the board heard this matter on February 10th. Mr. Rizzo came in, property in 314 North 17th Street. He had a 100 by 100 foot lot. He wanted to divide it down the middle. Both lots would be conforming. Minor subdivision, the board heard it, approved it, and we had a number of conditions that are set forth in the resolution. We reminded the applicant of the various ordinance requirements in terms of individuality of housing units and certain construction issues. So that's what the Rizzo application was.
Okay. So everyone knows we are going to have we need a motion to approve the resolution, but only for the members that were here on that evening can vote to approve that resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Demondo, second by Mr. Finestrella. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Clella?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Herbalario?
Yes.
Mr. Demondo?
Yes.
Okay. The second application for resolutions, application 11-21, Tanya Miranda. Mr. Rego?
Yes, Mrs. Miranda also appeared before us on the 10th of February. They have a single-family house at 315 North 21st Street. They want to put an addition on to their house. The issue that we had in terms of a variance was the front yard setback. Their existing front yard setback was slightly over 19 feet from the street. The front yard setback in the zone is 25 feet, so they were they had an issue with that. But the board was convinced that the addition that they wanted to put on would not further encroach into the front yard setback. There were a number of other homes in the neighborhood also that did not have the required 25 feet, and the board granted the variance requested.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve these resolutions and only those members that were here on that evening. Motion made by Mr. Finestrella, second by Mr. Demondo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Clella?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Herbalario?
Yes.
And Mr. Demondo?
Yes.
Okay, we have a little stick in here. It's the videographer services, a resolution to approve the additional wages for our videographer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, a motion to approve the additional? Approved by Mr. Pantita, seconded by Mr. Finestrella. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paterno?
Yes.
Mr. Finestrella?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Clementi?
Yes.
Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Clella?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Herbalario?
Yes.
And Mr. Demondo?
Yes.
Okay. Any old business to discuss? Anybody have anything to discuss on the board? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move into the first application, which is Merck, application 21-1 and 10-21. Anyone from Merck wish to come up and speak? I think what we're going to do before we get started, because it's going to be a good night, I think why don't we have our professionals and everyone sworn in at this point so we could get that portion out of the way. Lou?
Yeah, let me ask our board engineer, our board planner, Chris Cueto, and Kevin O'Brien, with regard to your testimony tonight on either of the two applications, do you swear that it shall be true?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. State your name, address, and everything for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Nicole Magdziak, Magdziak, of the law firm Day Pitney, 1 Jefferson Road, Parsippany, New Jersey, here this evening on behalf of the applicant Merck.
Okay.
So we're here this evening in connection with a minor subdivision request, which is a combination of a lot line adjustment and a consolidation. Currently, the property consists of 4 lots, Block 181, Lot 1, and Block 180, Lots 11, 12, and 18. Merck is proposing to subdivide the property and consolidate it so that there are resulting 2 lots. The southernmost lot will be the smaller of the two, of approximately 147,000 square feet, and will contain a data center. The purpose of this subdivision is because Merck is looking to potentially sell a portion of their properties. They will retain the data center portion, and at some point in the future will intend to sell the other lot. So we are requesting 1 variance in connection with this application for impervious coverage. The site currently, some of the individual lots are over on impervious coverage, but because the lot lines are adjusting, the larger lot will end up complying with the impervious coverage requirements, but the smaller lot will have an impervious coverage of 88.3%, where 80% is permitted. There are no site improvements proposed as part of this application. It's just a function of the sizes of the lots changing. So we are not proposing any improvements at this time. I have Nicholas Rotunda, our engineer from T&M, here with me this evening. We also have Stephanie Chapman, a representative of Merck, in the event that there are questions that Nick is unable to answer.
Okay, cool. Could you spell your last name again, please?
Sure. M as in Mary, A, G as in good, D as in dog, Z as in zebra, I-A-K.
Thank you very much.
Madziak?
Magdziak, yes.
Magdziak.
Thank you.
Okay.
Louis Lovato on my report if you need it.
Okay, okay. I neglected to mention, or to ask, we're okay on notice and publication for If you could raise your right hand, please. With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
Could you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Nicholas Rotunda, R-O-T-O-N-D-A.
Thank you.
Nick, can you please describe your education and experience for the board?
Sure. Get to vet info.
Right now.
Okay. So you're starting, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you please provide your education, qualifications, and background for the board?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 1989. I'm also a certified municipal engineer and a planner as well. And I've been a planner since 1990. I have a bachelor's degree from Villanova University in civil engineering, and I have a master's degree from Philly Dickinson University in business administration. And I've testified before this board, I think, 4 times.
Okay,
And then,
we're good to go. If we want to get out of here tonight, you got a list, don't you?
There's a game on, so I have to watch it.
So, have you been engaged by Merck as the project engineer and planner for this
I
site?
have.
And did you prepare the subdivision plans, or were they prepared under your direction at your firm?
They were prepared under the direction of my firm by a land surveyor who was licensed in the state of New Jersey.
And you're familiar with the plans, correct?
I am.
Can you please describe the general location of the property and what's there today?
Sure. This is the site of Merck headquarters, which is on Galvin Hill Road. And the property that we're speaking about is Swenson Drive, which is in the rear access point off of Sumner Drive, which is to the actual back of the site, but it is adjacent and contiguous to the Merck headquarters that you drive past on the main drag.
And why are we proposing this subdivision?
Subdivision being proposed, you mentioned before, because we're going to retain the data center. The data center is on a separate lot. And to do that, we modified that lot so that it would be a standalone lot, adding to the existing lot. So we're taking 4 existing lots and bringing them down to 2 lots. And that's the extent of the application as a minor. As Nicole mentioned just a moment ago, the application has existing nonconformities in coverage. Those conformities change when the lot lines change, but there is no new impervious. It's just a modification of the existing impervious numbers, which requires a variance, which is a continuation of an existing nonconformity. It changes from 80 required up to 88%, which is the variance.
And Mr. Rotundo, we prepared some exhibits that were submitted that were colored. You have them up on your board. Can you just, using those exhibits, explain to the board where the existing lot lines are and where the resulting lots will be after the subdivision?
I can.
I'm going to ask the witness to tell us when and if we are observing an exhibit that we do not have. We'll have to mark that then. If we have it, we don't need to mark it.
So
Maybe Nicole could keep us on track on that.
So the first board that's up here is, it's the drawing number SUB 22A, which is the subdivision 2A. And as you can see, it's sheet 1 of 2. That's a sheet that you've already seen. So this is one of the applications. The only thing we did differently here, and I'm about to go slightly, is that we colored in so you can see some hatching.
But then why don't we mark it then? Because if we don't have it in color, then, well...
You do have it.
Yeah, okay.
We have it. We have this.
We got, okay.
You have the color, I think it's a little smaller map, it's the same map.
That's okay.
And you just took the map, nothing is different mechanically on it or technically. And what we did is we just highlighted the areas so it's the same detail. And as you can see, there's several lot lines. The first lot is the existing large lot, which is block 181, lot 1.01. That's the one that fronts on Galloping Hill Road. The one that I mentioned is visible from the street. But if you come around the back and you come off of Fairfield and go on to 31st and then on Sumner, you can see Swenson Drive in the rear. That's where the second lot is that we would have when it was completed. That second lot would be, as we're calling it, proposed lot 18.01, but in block 180.01. Those are the 2 lots that are left. First big lot with this small portion added to it. Second hatch lot, and the one I just mentioned a moment ago. That comes from 4 separate lots, and as I mentioned just before, it does require an existing nonconformity continuance, which is the variance for coverage from 80% required to 80%.
And Mr. Rotunda, in your opinion, does this variance relief have any substantial impact on neighboring properties?
No, it does not.
And the existing drainage that is out there on the site today, which accommodates the existing coverage, is currently operational, correct?
That is correct.
And no, in your opinion, no additional drainage is required because we're not proposing any improvements, correct?
There's no improvements proposed, therefore there's no changes to anything on the site from a drainage, traffic, or application point of view. It's just a lot line change, which is honestly just a tax map revision by the time, if it's approved tonight.
And Mr. Rotunda, we are in receipt of 2 review letters. One is the board engineer's review letter dated March 7th, and the second is the board planner's review letter dated March 7th.
Yes.
In terms of the board engineer review letter, we did receive a couple comments, and we will comply with all of those comments, correct?
That is correct.
And there were a couple questions also in the board planner review letter, some of which we have responded to in relation to the reason for this subdivision, and others that have been answered in the direct testimony. There was one other question in that, or comment in that review letter relating to the zoning. As a result of this application, we are going to end up with the larger lot being a split zone, correct?
That is correct.
And the comment related to whether there should be a revision to the zoning to make it be in one zone, and we are not opposed to having a discussion about that, correct?
We are not, it's not part of this application with a minor subdivision, but there's no opposition to that small, again, lot line change for the zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have for direct.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the board here have any questions for Ms. Magdziak or Mr. Rotundo at this time? Yeah. Mr. David?
Yeah, the small knockout in red, yeah, is that part of the larger lot, or is that being added to the larger lot?
That's being actually added to the larger lot.
Okay, and what is the purpose of having that little knockout?
Because of the operations that are on site, it belongs with part of that. I believe there's actually an existing building there that operates as part of it. In the past, when I had done applications in the past, I knew what the uses were, but I think it's changed slightly since then, and those uses are part of this lot as opposed to the need for the data center lot, which is this one, to be separate. So this piece and the building on this are part of the operation for Merck's main site.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Curto, with respect to the letter that was sent to Merck, do you feel that they have satisfied everything that you set forth, or is there some things that you'd like to ask or move forward with?
Mr. Chairman, no. They will comply with all my comments, and I have no additional comments.
Okay. Mr. O'Brien, I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you satisfied with the letter that you set forth, and did they comply with everything in your report?
They did, Chairman, with one request. You have my contact information. Could you have someone from Merck contact me? We are in the process of rewriting our master plan, so we'd like your input as to that, putting that all into one.
Yes, that's
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone from our board here right now have any questions for our planner, our engineer, or the two people that are standing in front of us? Okay. So why don't we do this? Maybe at this point, we need a motion to open this up to the public. Do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other witnesses?
We do have another witness here from Merck, but we're just reserving that person in the event that any of the questions were unanswered that were in the planner's review letter.
Would anyone on the board like to hear from a Merck representative? If not, I don't think it's necessary.
Not unless they want us to.
So can we have a motion now to open to the public? Motion made by Mr. Ladati, second by Mr. Venestrello. All in favor? Anyone from the public wishing to speak on Merck and Merck only? Okay. Is that mic broke? It's not in the stand or something?
It's broken.
Oh, it is broken? Because I thought you were going to do the song here.
Lounge act?
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is John Zimmerman. I live at 26 North 7th Street, Kenilworth, New Jersey.
Good evening, Mr. Zimmerman.
I am a Merck stockholder, by the way. My question to these people are, as to this piece of the property that they want the zoning changed, is what's on the property now and what's going to be put on the property?
There's no change in zoning, sir, by the way.
Okay.
It's only lot line adjustments.
Oh, it's just lot.
They're not doing anything now other than requesting lot lines to be modified.
Thank you.
That's it? Thank you very much, Mr. Zimmerman. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Herbert, come on up, please. How you doing, Mr. Herbert? State your name and address for the record, please.
I just have one quick question.
Got to state your name and address.
Robert Herbert, 14 North 12th Street, Kenilworth.
Thank you.
The new second lot that they're merging, I guess 3 and 4 with it, is that lot going to be conforming with that zone regarding, the lot size? Like if it's required to have 20,000 square feet, will that smaller lot be conforming or non-conforming?
Mr. Rotunda?
Yes, it conforms other than the coverage requirement we asked for the variance, so yes, it does conform.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, motion to close by Mr. Ladati, second by Mr. Venestrello. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Anyone here from our board have any questions or discussions that we need to talk about with this application? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion here on this application?
I make a motion to move the application as stated by Mr. Rega.
The motion is moved by Mr. Pantina, seconded by Mr. Venestrello. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paterno?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Konecki?
Yes.
Mr. Cantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Colella?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Valerio?
Yes.
Mr. Demondo?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Mr. Maziak, Mrs. Maziak, and Mr. Rotunda, thank you for a clean application, as always. Okay, let me put this aside. Huh? Let me just get this out of the way. That was helpful. Take this over.
Yes, generally. You could say, first of someone ahead of you says, when you have in mind, just say, I second it, Joe.
Okay. Let's see where I am here. Okay, our next application, number 390, Kenilworth redevelopment, urban renewal. Anyone for this, please come up to the podium.
And we're good on notice and publication. Yes.
Good on notice and publication.
Yes.
I thought it was just stale candy. I didn't know how long it was there.
Yeah, just tee it up,
I guess Mr. Mr. Barr, you ready? Okay.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. For the record, my name is Joe Paparo from Porzio, Bromberg, and Newman on behalf of the applicant, Kenilworth Redevelopers Urban Renewal LLC. This application involves property located at 25 North 26th Street, Block 183, Lot 9 on the tax map of the Borough of Kenilworth. Before I begin with witnesses, Chairman, board members, I'd like to just briefly give an overview of where we've come with this application and this project. This is a project that began in its inception over 2 years ago. Approximately in February of 2020, council recommended and requested that the planning board, through its planner, prepare a study of the property in question to see if that property met the statutory criteria for an area in need of redevelopment under New Jersey law. That study was presented to the borough, and the conclusion was that the property did in fact meet the statutory criteria. Subsequent to the property being found to be an area in need of redevelopment, the plan, a redevelopment plan, was prepared by the borough's planner, and that's entitled the 25 North 26th Street Redevelopment Plan. As your planner, Mr. O'Brien, set forth in his review letter dated March 8, 2022, and by the way, did an excellent job of running through the history of a redevelopment project, so we appreciate that education in the report. And as Mr. O'Brien pointed out, after the redevelopment plan is adopted by this municipality, that sets forth the guidelines, the zoning criteria that the redeveloper is required to follow. Subsequent to the adoption of the redevelopment plan, Borough Council adopted a resolution designating this applicant as the designated redeveloper of this property and authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement with the Borough of Kenilworth. That redevelopment agreement was executed by the parties in December of 2021. And the redeveloper designation and the redeveloper agreement are the mechanisms that allow the applicant to now appear before this body to present its site plan application. Again, the presentation this evening is for site plan approval, preliminary and final site plan approval of the redevelopment project. This is an exciting project for the Borough of Kenilworth. This is not only the first redevelopment project in the borough, but this is also the first inclusionary multifamily development in the Borough of Kenilworth. The proposal, as you'll hear this evening, is to construct a 4-story building consisting of a total of 165 units. As part of the 165 units, there will be 25 affordable housing units with a veteran's preference. That veteran's preference is a requirement of the redeveloper as part of the redevelopment agreement.
Mr. Paparo, can I just interrupt one second, please? I hear some phones either going off, vibrating or something. Could we please either silence them or just be courteous? Because it's very, very difficult to hear in here, especially on the audio. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As stated, this is an application for preliminary and final site plan approval. The regulations are found in the redevelopment plan. We are seeking no variances, no deviations, and no design waivers, as confirmed by the board's consultants. The proposed multifamily use is permitted under the redevelopment plan. And we have, in fact, received reports from the board's consultants. We've had an opportunity to review those reports, and we're prepared this evening to respond and to confirm on the record that we will meet all of the recommendations advocated by your professionals.
By both the engineer and planner, Mr. Paparo?
Yes, Chairman. And just again, for the record, Mr. O'Brien's planning report is dated March 8, 2022. And the Harbor Consultants Engineering Report is dated March 3, 2022. Those are the reports that we're going to be referring to this evening throughout our presentation. For witnesses this evening, I'd like to begin the presentation with Maurice Mead, the project architect. Mr. Mead will go through the construction, the proposed construction of the building materials, both exterior and interior. As you'll hear this evening, and again, it's part of the requirements of the redevelopment plan, this facility, this residential development, will have high-end finishes, features, and amenities for the residents, both interior and exterior. Mr. Mead will go through in great detail the proposed construction and those amenities, as well as the unit sizes and other attributes of the proposal. So with your indulgence, Chairman and board members, I'd like to first call Maurice Mead.
Before we do that, can we hear from Mr. O'Brien?
You're under oath.
Thank you, Mr. Rego. Mr. Chairman, I've been asked to just summarize the planning points of this application so that the board members are aware of what they're going to be looking at this evening in hearing, listening, reviewing this application, and then voting upon it at the appropriate time. This is for a preliminary and final site plan, which is fully conforming. Mr. Paparo has pointed that out, and I want to underline that. A fully conforming site plan means no variances, there are no checklist waivers, there are no design waivers, meaning that it conforms 100% to the ordinance. The ordinance in this case is the redevelopment plan that was adopted by council last year. The redevelopment plan serves as the ordinance, the land use ordinance, for this particular site. The term inherently beneficial is one that is assigned by the state of New Jersey to things that benefit everybody in the state. Amongst them are things such as churches, hospitals, and affordable housing. Affordable housing being an inherently beneficial use is something that has to be taken into consideration in the course of your review this evening. Now, normally, you get a use variance application, let's say for a church in a residential zone, requires a use variance, and then you can go through certain procedural steps to review it as an inherently beneficial use. Tonight, the case is different because it already conforms with everything. It doesn't need any variances. But the fact that it is still an inherently beneficial use has to be there in your deliberation of this application. I've been asked by certain board members whether the board can deny the site plan. And I would refer the board to a passage from the Cox book, the planning and zoning reference book that we all use. And using the 2022 book, pages 491 to 483, 483 to 491. And just a very brief passage which talks about denial of site plans. Is there justification for denial? And Mr. Cox points out, when a site plan is being considered by a planning board, always a permitted use, in most cases, the board must grant site plan approval and, where appropriate, waivers or exceptions from ordinance provisions. It goes on to say, a planning board has no authority to deny an application based on existing off-site conditions. The board's review is limited to what is happening on site. Now, in terms of traffic, your review can be, are the entrances adequate? Is there a way to get in and out of the property? Is the traffic managed on the property itself in a safe way that meets the standards? That is part of your review. But in terms of denying an application, the only way a board can deny an application of this type, a conforming site plan, is if you find that this is against the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the state of New Jersey. And you would have to put that on the record and show that. So with that said, the board, I believe I've laid out the parameters for your review this evening. I welcome any of your questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. O'Brien at this point? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Seeing none, Mr. Papala, thank you for yielding to Mr. O'Brien. Thank you. Swearing your witness?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Mead, could you raise your right hand, please? With regard to this application, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
State your name and spell your last name, please, for the record.
Maurice Mead, last name M-E-A-D.
Your first name was?
Maurice M.
Thank you.
A-U-R-I-C.
Thank you.
Sure.
Maurice, for the benefit of the board and public, can you provide your education, area of expertise, and the licenses you hold, sir?
Yes, I am a licensed architect under the Board of New Jersey Architects. I've been licensed since 2008. I have a 5-year professional architecture degree from Andrews University.
And do you regularly appear before planning and zoning boards?
I do.
And you've been accepted by an expert in the field of architecture by those boards?
Yes.
And your licenses that you've discussed are currently in good standing?
Yes.
Chairman, board members, I would offer Mr. Mead as an expert in architecture.
Very good.
Mr. Mead, I know we have a number of exhibits this evening, and as was discussed with the prior application, before you provide any testimony on any exhibits, please mark them and with today's date, and we'll go through them chronologically, A1, A2, and the like. So would you like to...
Joe, if we have them, we don't need to mark them.
Sure. And Maurice, if there's anything that I know you said your plan packages that the board members have in front of them for consideration this evening have a number of these colored renderings in there. So I'll leave it up to you if it's easy to decipher which ones they have and which ones they don't, or if you'd like to just go in order of your preference.
Sure. All the boards you have here, we have added a couple additional items for the amenity areas. What we were going to do is start with the exterior and work our way around the building and then onto the interior, if that sounds good.
Perfect. And then if you could just identify it by the sheet number. If the board members have those plans in their packet, when you refer to a sheet, please refer to the sheet
Sure.
number.
We'll start with the perspectives, which give a good overall view of the project. Starting with A001, which was the entry perspective from 25th North Street. As you can see, the interior of the building is a variety of attractive materials. We've given it a palette and a composition that give a variety and a whole complete form. The base of the building is veneered stone, and then we have a palette above that gets a little bit more playful and creates a vertical expression. So what we have here are horizontal siding, which would be a hardy panel. Then we have Gen Weld windows. We have wood siding. The base of the building is where you have parking entry points as well as the entry of the building. This other perspective to my left is on sheet A203.
Mr. Mead, it's important that the board sees these exhibits as well, and I know many board members are out here, but I don't know if the board members up here can...
I can bring it up
see that.
front.
You're sort of blocking, especially the map behind you.
Let's do this one. Okay, so we have this in our plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, 8203.
Right, we started with A203. And then I'll bring the second board so you can see.
Can you see that? Can you see it?
Yeah, but he may point.
Yeah, so I'm fine. I have everything in my plan, so I'm much more concerned with the people out here.
Oh, can everybody see this okay?
Anybody not see that? Can anybody not see the boards? Okay, so I'll take it as everybody can see it.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Can I see? This is the perspective looking towards the golf course, facing east. And what you see here is the court, an open court, about 29,000 square feet of plaza area that we provide above the parking space. We're actually 3 residential floors above the parking podium or plaza space with a court, and there are amenities, exterior amenities on this court. We have seating areas, we have a dog court as well that dogs can run, and they're contained in that space. Barbecue areas, a variety of exterior amenities.
Maurice, before you go to the next exhibit, regarding the building materials, I know you put together a physical material board. And I know that's obviously something that the board doesn't have in their package. They have a photo of it. For the benefit of the board and public, can you just, let's mark this exhibit A1.
A1.
And what's depicted on A1 are the materials, the hardy plank siding, the stone veneer. You've provided physical remnants of those, correct?
Correct. So what we have here, as I mentioned, on the base of the building, we have the stone veneer, and that forms the plinth of the building around the garage surface itself, the first floor. Above the first floor, we have a variety of hardy panel siding, the gray and a lighter gray, as well as some plank surfaces to create a variety of patterns. So this would be a horizontal one, and this would be a plain field panel. So it creates a variety of textures. And then here we have the wood sample that's inserted within the elevation phase itself.
And Maurice, I know you're directing your testimony to the public, which I appreciate. For the board's benefit, they have a sheet in their sets that has this exact exhibit, obviously not the physical materials, but photos of the materials you just described, correct? Correct, Maurice? Maurice?
What's that?
Correct. The board members have that in their drawings?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So none of the materials would be considered viable?
No.
And do you know the durability of those items, like how long are they expected to last? I mean, thinking down the road 5 years from now that, we don't have things that are faded and deteriorating and so on.
No, hard panel is a through material system. It's actually a through body color. It goes through and permeates the actual cement board itself. It's a porous material.
And again, durability, what is the expected life?
Well, it's a cement panel. It has a lifetime of at least 20 plus years.
And what about the items on the top? It's the same?
Yes, these are all hardy
It's all
panel.
the same.
They're all the same product, exactly.
Got it.
Same with stone veneer. That's has almost a lifetime guarantee on it.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up on the question, it's a great question. The redevelopment plan and the redevelopment agreements specifically prohibit vinyl siding, so if
Right, that's why I asked.
if this building were sold and something needed to be replaced, the new developer, someone would not be able to put that type of material. These are the materials that are mandated by the redevelopment plan.
Correct. That's intentionally done.
Thank you.
Okay, Maurice, you can continue with the exterior elevations.
This is Exhibit A201.
Sheet A201.
Sheet A201. I'll hold it the best I can for everybody to see. On this elevation, we're looking at the west side from the south side, and what you see are displays of the material, the horizontal panel, pearl gray, which is a lighter color, and then we have the night gray, which is the darker one, and it's creating a composition of light and dark panels. Same with the south side. You have the mechanical veneer stone at the base with the same siding panels above.
And Maurice, this building has been designed, obviously showing the elevations, this building's been designed in accordance with the height limitations and restrictions in the redevelopment plan,
Right,
correct?
45 feet, correct. Sheet A202. This is the east elevation, which is facing the court, open to the golf course. Here we have the same composition again with the variety of light and dark grays, all in the hardy panel siding materials, showing the base of the building again with the stone veneer. North elevation, you have the same composition. You see the garage openings there, manufactured stone, wrapping the exterior elevation.
And Maurice, based on your testimony, all elevations are going to have the same finishes, the same materials. This isn't where the front facade has one material and then the back or sides that are not in view have a lesser material, correct?
Every elevation is consistent in the same material. There's not one side that has less quality.
And that uniformity is also required by the redevelopment plan of the Borough of Kenilworth.
Correct.
Very good.
Now we're moving on to the floor plans.
Sure. And you're referring now to sheet A101 of the board's package?
Correct. Sheet A101 is the garage floor plan. We have 316 parking spaces, and we have 62 of those 316 spaces are surface parking.
Mr. Mead, can you repeat that? I couldn't get that.
Sure. We have a total of 316 parking spaces, and 62 exterior surface spaces.
Thank you.
They are included into the 316. 5 of those spaces are drop-off locations at the entry of the building.
And just to explain, elaborate on that, when you say drop-off spaces, can you, why have those 5 been, what have they been dedicated for in your testimony?
Those drop-off spaces, as you know, nowadays, we have many drop-off items, packages, UPS, FedEx, all of those packages that need to be dropped off quickly. We've allocated a space for those packages quickly to be dropped off and not block off the entry of the building.
Or park on the street?
Correct.
And with the allocation of those 5 spaces specifically for those types of periodic deliveries, that leaves 311 spaces for the residents, correct?
Correct.
And the requirement is 311?
That is correct. That is why we allocated for drop-off specifically. The entry of the building is designed to have a gesture that welcomes everybody. We have a vestibule for energy efficiency when you come in the building, so that on days where we have severe weather, you'll have a transition space. So you see the orange area here, there's a vestibule right off the entry. That is an energy code requirement. When you come in the lobby, there are, again, there's the package room directly right off the lobby space. And the mail room as well. Those are just quick entry points where people come in and out every day, quick access to the entry. Then we have the elevators and the mechanical spaces. So that would be the first floor orientation of the amenities and how people interact from a circulation standpoint.
So, Mr. Mead, the ground floor contains that core for the building that you described and the parking, correct? The garage parking?
Correct. So we have 2 garage entry points that are completely below the residential areas contained. And you have also handicap spaces as well as a variety of areas where you can get your energy vehicle charging located at as well.
And thank you for mentioning that. This project is required to provide EV, electric vehicle, conduit charging stations to conform not only to the redevelopment plan, but also the recently enacted statute in New Jersey for multifamily projects and other projects that a certain percentage of the parking spaces be made EV ready, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
As well as surface parking EV stations as well. If I could point to them.
Just for the record, you're pointing, just describe directionally where you're pointing so that the record can pick that up.
Okay, so I am pointing to the south side here, and we have 9 EV charging stations here, as well as the interior we have a bank of 17, another bank of 13. So that would describe the parking.
And I know the civil engineer will go into that in more detail.
Right.
So we appreciate you introducing.
Sure. So I think that covers the
Can we move up?
garage plan,
Yes.
first floor?
Let's move up to the residential component.
Sheet A102. This is the floor directly above the garage level. And you'll see the first floor residential areas as it begins up the building. We have the court that we mentioned facing the north, east. And also a section, longitudinal section showing how the building is oriented vertically. You have a court in the middle, and then on either side you have the residential areas. And the gray portion is the garage that we just mentioned below. What's so unique about this building is that we're providing garage parking that covers all the areas that normally would be exposed. I don't know if you've seen other, typically garage spaces now are not always provided in the past. You would have just surface parking. In this case, we're enclosing the majority of the parking with the podium above, which allows for this nice terrace space. And we have a court that's filled with a variety of amenities, seating areas, green lawn. We have, as I mentioned, the dog park, a couple of barbecue areas. These items aren't on the plans that you have right now. We did add these additional details that aren't in the set right now. And we wanted to address that we have other amenities and opportunities. Would it help if people came a little closer, or how would we?
When there's a break or when you're finished,
Okay.
come look at the exhibit, sure.
Okay. I'm sorry we don't have a PowerPoint here today.
And Maurice, that open courtyard that's on the second floor, that's the outdoor amenity. Do you have a rough idea of how large that is?
I believe we were saying that's around 29,000 square feet. That should be on the plan.
And that outdoor area is also mandated by the redevelopment plan.
That's correct.
Do we need to?
Yeah. You need to answer.
Let's mark this.
Do we need to mark that A2? I'm told it's a new.
It had, Mr. Mead, your testimony a few minutes ago was that this exhibit, or this sheet now calls out the dog park with labels that weren't, those labels weren't on the plan.
Mark it A2 then.
Yeah, A2.
Yes, please.
Modified first floor.
A102.
A102. Part of the amenity on this space are also interior portions of the building that interact with the exterior. We discussed the first floor having more of the practical functional aspects of the building, but as you come to the second floor, you get basically a clubhouse experience. And the clubhouse is a space where you could get away and have a couple hours of entertainment, whether it be TV, sitting down, fitness spaces. You would have a golf simulator, you would have a lounge area, you would have a fitness and yoga space. It's a place where you could get away from the apartment and interact with the apartment. Everybody that lives within the apartment complex. So we wanted to bring that as a real amenity space that you would experience as a clubhouse. And you could have, we also have seen, PlayStations and old, Pac-Man or whatever you'd like in that space to experience. Just a place that you would get away and be with your friends, or sit down in a lounge, watch a football game, or go to the golf simulator. That's a real popular thing right now. People can go play golf indoors and keep track of their game on a day that you don't have good weather.
I'd like to move on to the upper levels. And Maurice, I don't know when in your testimony you want to discuss it, but can you include in your testimony the number of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and get to the unit sizes for the benefit of the board and public so they can follow along?
Okay.
This is, you're back to A102, which is...
Yeah, this has the market rate apartments, so you have a total of 140 market rate apartments on A102. It gives a matrix here that you can look at the market rate ratios. One bedrooms, we have 96. Approximately 60% of the apartments are one bedrooms. And two bedrooms, we have 44, just a little bit less than 39%. And then the COA, affordable housing units, we have 25, which is 15% of the market rate, which would be a total of 15%.
And the three-bedroom units, there are no market rate.
That's correct.
Those are simply for the affordables, correct?
Exactly, and that's what you see there. The three-bedroom, you have 5 of the COA,
And those are requirements, those are state requirements.
That's correct.
Three bedrooms.
So, moving up the building, the third and the fourth floor are what I call more of the typical floors. And what you see here is a floor plan.
You just moved to A103?
Sorry, sheet A104.
A104 you're on?
Yes, A103 and 104 are
Okay.
fairly typical.
I didn't hear you say that. If you said it, I wanted to be sure everybody's keeping up in the audience.
Thank you. The typical floor, we have a corridor wrapping above the building. Within that corridor, you see the apartments and the court below, as we've been discussing. There are 61,000 square feet, 61,060 square feet of residential area. Within the corridor, you will see a room, several utility areas, as well as a trash room, TR, and mechanical spaces. The one bedrooms are A3s, and then you have a couple of varieties of two bedrooms colored in the green. And then we have as well the three-bedroom colors as well. That would be the typical floor plan layout.
Could you show that, I'm sorry, Mr. LeBron, could you show that 104 to the people in the audience, because it's on an angle? I want to be sure everybody gets a good perspective of what's going on.
And Maurice, while you're doing that, is A104, does that also have the labels that were added in response to the reports we received?
They are, they're all consistent. There's no change in labeling.
But those are different than the board because they have the labels, correct?
Correct.
Let's mark that, let's mark A104 as Exhibit A3.
Yep.
So, Maurice, if you're done, I'd like to just run through the operation of this building. How will this building function on a day-to-day basis for the residents? Are we at that point?
Sure.
Okay, great. You spoke about the refuse, the trash room. Can you explain to the board and the public how trash is designed to be handled in this building and your discussions with the ownership as to how it will be managed?
I'm going back to sheet A104 for this discussion. Sheet A104, you'll see a room that's called TR. It's directly off the corridor. It's a room that's 12 by 14. And what we have in this room is a trash chute. We'll go through the complete building down to the trash tube on the first floor, which I will show you in the next exhibit. The trash room is directly off the corridor on each floor of the residential floors. I'm moving to sheet A101 now.
While you're moving to A101, the trash room that's on every floor, that contains a chute for recycling and for refuse, correct?
That's correct. Sheet A101. Sheet A101. Garage plan. What we have here is a room, a trash service room. You'll see the crocheted area there in purple. And directly below that space is where the trash room is that we described on the residential floors. So the trash chute will come down in, drop the trash and recycling into two different containers. One would be your general trash and one would be your recycling. In that space, we can talk about how it transitions out of the building. Is that?
That would be great, yes.
Okay. Within the building, we have in the garage level, we have a loading dock. Within that space, you would have an area where you could transition for trash directly to a trash truck. Within the garage, it would not be seen from the exterior. And then from the loading dock, you have a parking space for a trash truck. And then you would exit out of the building.
And I know our civil engineer will go through the turning movements and the technical, but from a functionality standpoint, your testimony is that every residential floor has their own trash and recycling room with chutes. It empties ultimately at the conclusion on the ground level garage into a trash room, and that's where it's accessed by the waste hauler, correct?
Correct.
And in your discussions with the ownership, this will be private hauler, correct?
Yes, it'll be done by a private hauler.
And did you discuss the frequency with the owner?
Yes, we did discuss the frequency with the owner.
And?
That would be 1 day, every day.
Daily?
Daily, yes.
Right. Okay. In your professional opinion, designing multifamily buildings with daily pickup, has the refuse room been sized accordingly to handle the volume for 165 units?
Absolutely. We can give you other built examples as well.
Can you repeat that?
We could give you other built examples as well.
Yes, we have a question for Mr. David.
Yes, will you guys would be discussing like security of the building at some point?
Sure.
Okay.
It's a great time to, Maurice, if you're ready, to talk about how the residents typically enter and access the facility.
Can I just ask one question on this thing? So you said the room is sized to be adequate. Since it's all underneath the building, for the private waste haulers, whether it be a rear loader, garbage truck, or something like that, does it have enough of room underneath the building to make its maneuvers to get the trash out, or is it just going to be guys on the back of a garbage truck throwing it into the garbage truck and backing out?
Maybe you could rephrase the question. It seemed like two questions.
So you have the room, it's adequate, I got it. You have you have private haulers coming in, making a K-turn, backing up into the room, I guess. And since it's underneath the building, is there enough of height to either get the rear tippers back there or over the truck? That's all I'm asking.
We have a private trash company that's going to be accessing this, and they will make the accommodations to access that space.
By sending the appropriate vehicle that can access the loading dock, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is this a room, or is it a compactor, or a dumpster goes in there, or just goes down the street?
Yes, all of the above. It will be a room, enclosed space with a trash compactor. What happens is there's a chute off the trash compactor, it drops directly into the compactor itself, is compacted and transitions into bins.
Maurice, did you want to speak to, I mean, this is, you talked about the elevator, this building will be fully ADA accessible, correct?
Correct.
Fully sprinklered?
Fully sprinklered.
And there was some comments from the engineer about coordinating locations of new fire hydrants. That will be done with the, and I know this is an engineering question, but since you're up there, that will be done with the coordination of the Borough of Kenilworth Fire Department, correct?
Correct, absolutely. We'll be in coordination with them.
Can you speak now to the question about security? How, in your experience designing similar buildings, what does ownership and management do for providing access to residents and residents only?
Okay, so at the entry, we would have a card reader. Everyone will come up to the entry door and use a card reader to get into the building.
Do you need a key fob or a specific card to gain access?
Exactly.
I was thinking more from like the garage perspective. So, you know, you've got vehicles parked, you know, now with car thefts, you know, et cetera. So what prevents anyone from going into the garage and getting out of the garage?
Yeah, we talked about, we're going to provide a high-speed roll-up door. It would be graded. You'd still be able to have ventilation in and out, but it would be secure.
Okay. So anytime a resident is going in or out, they would do something, the door goes up and they pull out and it comes back in.
Exactly.
And Maurice, again, I may be asking you engineering questions, you can tell me to defer to our engineer, but where that roll-up door would be, in your opinion, wouldn't result in any vehicles backing out onto the road? It's far enough back from North 26th Street?
Absolutely. We're basically traversing through the full depth of the site, where we have the two garage entry points.
The garage entry points, according to this exhibit, are the furthest removed from...
They're the furthest. Those are for vehicular entry points only. Those are not trash entry points.
Thank you. You had an opportunity to review the reports from the board planner and the board engineer, correct?
Correct.
Any objections to any of those additional recommendations?
Absolutely not.
I know there was a comment about there was going to be an identification sign. That sign would obviously have to be designed in accordance with the guidelines of the redevelopment plan. You understand that, correct?
Correct, yes.
Chairman, I have nothing further for the architect at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Paro. Thank you, Mr. Mead. Does anybody have any questions for him from the board now? We can always come back if we want to bring up another witness. All right, Mr. Paro, you could bring someone else up at this point.
Thank you.
What? Did someone raise their hand? Oh, I didn't see you, Christian. I'm sorry. A question for Mr. Mead?
Just one, it was, I know you said you were going to comply with all my comments, but just one was a question about laundry. They'll go to some details for it.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I think we skipped over the unit sizes as well. So could you talk about the interior of the units and the finishes? I know you have an exhibit showing the type of amenity and finishes, I should say, in each unit, the sizes, and whether or not they'll provide laundry facilities within each unit. Thank you, Mr. Corday. I forgot.
Just give me a second here.
Oh, you don't work
Maurice, we're going to have to mark this second exhibit.
Correct, this needs to be marked. This is a new exhibit.
A4?
A4. And what can we call it?
A401, please.
I mean, what?
This is our unit plan.
Unit plan.
And this is to respond to the question about laundry as well. So we prepared the exhibit today to respond. I'll turn it so everybody can see for a minute. So what we have here are the typical 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom, as well as some imagery of what the interiors would look like. Okay, to answer the question specifically, the laundry, we will have in each unit a washer dryer. And I will set the mic down and point it out on the plan.
Wait, for the record, you're pointing, just describe where on the exhibit you're pointing.
I was pointing at the one-bedroom washer dryer.
And how is it labeled? Is there an abbreviation for washer and dryer?
Yes, it's labeled as WD. Same for the two-bedroom. We have a one-bedroom, a two-bedroom washer dryer location allocated.
Is that also labeled WD?
Yes, sir.
I just had one there.
Thank you. The three-bedroom also has a washer and dryer labeled as WD. And I will point to it now. And you asked a question about square footage size.
Unit sizes, right?
Sure.
Typical unit sizes for the 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units.
Right, the average size. Average size of the one bedroom is 775 square feet. The two bedroom is, the average size is 1,171. The three bedroom bedroom is 1,245 square feet.
And now, Maurice, if you could just speak to the photos that you have on Exhibit A4. What do those photos depict?
These photos are in keeping of the exterior expression. We're bringing in some of the same color palette. And what you see is a condition here where you have a built unit, a kitchen, bathroom areas, and as well as the living areas. There will be a variety of images there that we have built as an example, as well as keeping with the color palette on the exterior.
I know you may not have gotten to the programmatic aspects of actually designing the interiors, but any typical finishes that you see in a building of this quality, types of cabinets, countertops, things of that nature, kitchens?
Right, so this would all have the low flush toilet fixtures, faucets, typical for a green building design. We will have finishes that are of high quality, granite countertops, cabinets that are built to last. We have a variety of tile patterns as well. Wall paint finishes, high gloss paint that would work well in a high-use space.
One last question, again, in response to the reports. Can you highlight for the board and the public any green initiatives that you've taken into consideration in designing this building? You've spoken about the electric vehicle charging spaces, which obviously furthers the green initiative, not only of this project and the redevelopment plan, but the state of New Jersey. Can you talk about any other steps that you and the developer have taken that are advancing a green initiative for the building?
Yes, I will. In green buildings, the orientation of the building is always critical, but in our project here, what we have done is we have taken the majority of the parking spaces and put them below a surface and provided you with amenity space. So what you're having now is impervious areas that are now pervious, because you have a surface now that allows for a green roof space. That is one of the most basic steps and most advantageous. You're eliminating parking surface now, and you're creating green space because everything is below the structure for parking. That would be the most significant, as well as the orientation of the building, providing natural light as much as possible. We have a court that faces the east side, and we have wonderful views, natural light coming into the buildings, as well as glazing that's energy efficient, low-E glazing, which prevents infrared from coming into the building, which can be damaging. We have, as I mentioned, plumbing fixtures that are low flow. We have Energy Star appliances that are energy efficient within the unit plans that I just mentioned. There's a variety of things that we could keep going on, but those are the majority of them.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Chairman, nothing further from Mr. Mead.
Okay, Mr. Pifaro, Mr. Mead, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Mead or Mr. Pifaro at this time? I hear from the public. We're going to open it up to the public in a little bit, so save your questions and I will address that later. Your next witness, Mr. Pifaro?
Thank you, Chairman. Our next witness is our civil engineer, Aaron Schrager. Mr. Mead, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Pifaro, if I may, how many witnesses do you have?
We have our civil engineers coming up next, our traffic engineer, and then our planner. 3 more, Chairman.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
Could you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Aaron Schrager, SCHRAGER.
Thank you.
Mr. Schrager, for the benefit of the board and the public, your education, area of expertise, and the licenses you hold, sir.
Absolutely. Graduated Worcester Polytechnic University, Institute of the time. 2000, Worcester, Massachusetts. Bachelor's in Civil Engineering. Licensed engineer. Engineer license in the state of New Jersey, professional planner license in the state of New Jersey, certified floodplain manager, certified public works manager, and certified municipal engineer in New Jersey as well.
And all of your licenses are currently in good standing?
Yes, they are.
Chairman, I would offer Mr. Schrager as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
Good to go.
Thank you. Mr. Schrager, I know you have exhibits this evening. Before you discuss any exhibits, be sure to mark them. We left off with A4, so your first exhibit will be A5 with today's date, sir.
That is correct. We have one exhibit. It's existing conditions, which is primarily an aerial imagery of the site itself. I'll mark that as A5.
Yes.
And and that will be the only exhibit in addition to the civil engineering drawing set we have. A5 does show the existing site, which I'll speak of a little bit. It's a 3.8 acre site approximately, which is vacant right now. It's currently being occupied by vehicle storage, primarily tractor trailers. The surface itself is made up of a combination of pavement and compacted surface course, generally flat with a slight pitch towards the northeast corner over here. And one thing to point out, which is on a separate sheet, but there is a 24-inch storm sewer that does bisect the property, borough owned, in the middle of the property there. So.
And Mr. Schrager, before you move off of A5, that aerial, you visited the site in preparation for your testimony, correct?
Correct, yes.
And does the image reflected in A5 that shows numerous tractor trailers, I don't know how many, is that an accurate depiction of the site today?
That is, yes.
Thank you. Continue.
The first sheet is our title sheet for the drawing set, which we spoke of earlier, followed by general notes, sheet 2 of the civil engineering drawings, and sheet 3 is just a topographic survey of the property itself and the existing condition, which it presently is. We spoke of the 24-inch storm, so that does bisect the property and discharge it to the rear. On the following sheet, which is identified site plan, is sheet number 4 in the set, 4 of 12. That's where we'll speak about the building itself. So this plan does show the building and how it's situated on the site.
I think it's the rotating base of yours, maybe?
I think it is, yeah. I'll move around and try to reduce that, so.
You turned it off. Is the light on the...
Light is on. Light is on. Good? Okay. So this depicts how the building's situated on the property, maintaining a 50-foot buffer on the north, west, and south side, only 6 foot on the east, all conforming. So that's how the building is laid out. Starting with parking, RSIS does require 311 spaces. We are providing 316. Of that, 62 are in the surface lot. We will meet all ADA requirements in terms of design and quantity of ADA spaces that are needed. We also show on this plan 48 electric charging stations, or the ability to have those make ready. That does meet the law that was passed last year, which is 15%, so we are meeting it with that. There are 8 of those shown on the surface lot, the remainder inside the building. For loading and zoning, we do have the loading area here that was spoken to previously by Maurice. And we also provide a separate, close to it's adjacent to the landscape island. It's a 12 by 25 foot loading zone, which we were using for the quicker drop-offs, the Amazon, the UPS, the shorter deliveries could go there in addition to the drop-off spaces. It's a little larger than the other spaces. Site circulation, we both have two-way circulation throughout the site, both interior and exterior. So two-way coming in and going out, and both accesses to the garage. There are 2 accesses to the parking garage up on the eastern side, 1 and 2. And there's also 2 proposed access points to North 26th Street, down here and here. And again, those would all be two-way access in both directions. The next sheet, which we'll talk about, but we have done circulation through the site. It does meet the fire vehicles that we were provided, both aerial truck and a pumper. It will, though it's not on the plan set, it does meet garbage trucks as well. And we're happy to provide that. Moving to pedestrian circulation, primary point of access would be right out the front door through a sidewalk on the landscape island, which will take you to North 26. From North 26, we would extend the sidewalk network towards the south, cross over and add the crosswalk and any required ADA ramps at these intersections with Jefferson, and then extend the sidewalk further to the south to connect it to the network that's there to provide access to Boulevard, which has both commerce and transit access. So streetscape here, per comments that we did receive, we will be willing to do more or less, but this right now will at least get you to an existing sidewalk network, but we'll work with anything else with your board engineer. There's, on the south side, there will be a 6-foot board-on-board fence for privacy to that property, and that details most of what we have on the site plan itself. So, one item just to bring up, the bike racks was called out in the report. We do show them up front. After further discussions, we will be putting them inside as part of both a bike storage and bike share program for the residents there. If need be, we could add a smaller one just for people who might visit on bikes, but we will move them away from the facade there and pick a separate area primarily inside the garage for the residents. Okay, this sheet was showing the movement of the fire vehicles we spoke of earlier, and showing up here. It doesn't appear that it printed as dark as we would have liked, but it does show successful maneuver for these fire vehicles.
And Aaron, what sheet is that, just so the board?
Yeah, this is now sheet 5 of 12, called the truck circulation plan.
And that demonstrates, according to your testimony, the ability of the borough's fire trucks to circulate safely.
Correct.
Can I ask a question from Can I ask a question, absolutely? So you showed the fire trucks circulating in and out of the site, but how do you address one of Mr. Suedo's comments and also Ms. Dolan's comments about the fire lane? I mean, wouldn't the fire lane go around the building and you only have 6 feet in the back on the east side? So how would it's up to the fire official, but again, if you were to do that, how would you?
Well, yes, we will meet with the fire official, and we're happy to provide what he or her might desire for that. If it's a fire lane around the rear of the building, yes, right now the space isn't there, and we don't intend to offer that, but I'm sure we could work out something with the confines we have to provide access, especially being a sprinklered building.
Well, Ms. Dolan's comment about RSIS and the fire lane, does it require, is a fire lane around the building required, or is it just?
I'm sure if the truck's going into the building, then it's not required, that's not in yet.
I know, I'm sorry.
Should be tested.
Let me just jump into it before we... So the redevelopment plan that governs this project required an upgrade to the sprinkler system in lieu of the having full access around the building, and that's the design criteria we follow, Mr. Schrager.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. The redevelopment plan that the borough established for this site required that the applicant, the redeveloper, upgrade the sprinkler system in lieu of providing circulation 100 or 360 degrees around the building, and that's the design criteria you followed for this design, correct?
Correct.
Where did you get your numbers for turn radius for trucks?
Did you get your answer? Mr. Mazzaro? Yes. If I may, I don't think Mr. Tanzi got the answer that he was looking for. Maybe we could clarify a little bit more.
I'm sorry, Mike. Sure. The redevelopment plan that governs the site required the upgrading or a higher level sprinkler system in lieu of having a fire truck go 360 degrees around the building.
Okay. I guess that's
Well, are you satisfied with that? Would you like to elaborate a little bit more?
No, if that was the redevelopment plan, I guess that's it. Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Carroll.
Sure, I'm sorry, Mr. Schrager, to continue. I'm sorry, there was a question about the
For
turning
your
radius.
calculations for turning radius, where did you get those numbers? What trucks did you base it on?
So it's the pumper track, I believe, is 43 feet, with the aerial ladder at 44 feet.
Ours is more than 48 feet.
It's 40. So we could, our office did receive that from someone from the borough. I can't say specifically, who, but we're happy to run this with a 48 foot. We could provide that. So.
The bucket over the front, because ours is old, turning radius isn't so good.
Right.
I don't know the numbers here, but just looking at it, I don't believe it's going to be.
Yeah, it's this one shown is 44 feet for the pumper, 43 for the aerial. We can run it with the larger truck. I mean, we could connect and I'll get the specific vehicle you have. If need be, the island might have to be trimmed some to accommodate, but we're confident we can get it in.
Mr. Schrager, continuing on with the discussion of the proposed site plan, just briefly, you mentioned the existing storm sewer pipe. Can you talk briefly about drainage, stormwater, utilities for this new building?
We can, and we'll move to the next sheet, which is considered grading, drainage, and utility, which does detail it. I guess we could start with the storm sewer itself. So, first, yes.
As you're flipping pages, you gotta tell us where you go.
Absolutely, my apologies, Chairman. This is now up to page 6.
Thanks.
So page 6 of the set is grading, drainage, and utility. First and foremost was that 24-inch pipe that bisects the property. So we will, as part of this project, be relocating that along the southern driveway aisle to its original terminus point as part of this project. We will grant an easement, and we will also put the pipe in the drive aisle itself, so it's easily accessible, not under parked cars. Hopefully it won't need to be accessed, but if it is, it will be out in the drive aisle for that purpose. Now, as a result of that, what we'll also be doing is fully upgrading the storm sewer system in Jefferson and the federal area here to reconnect all those older existing catch basins and pipes there. So it'll be a new system there, which will help with any ponding and flooding in that area. No problems doing pavement restoration and paving this area if need be. And then this system will accommodate that, as well as taking any roof drain and drainage from the site off to the rear of the property where it went originally. In regards to the drainage itself, right now, the site is acting primarily as an impervious surface. There's pavement, there's gravel that's been compacted heavily by the trucks you saw earlier over the years, so there's not a lot of percolation through there. We have had a discussion with your board engineer, and we do understand that we will revisit some of the assessment of that. I think we agree there's some portion of pervious and impervious surface there, so we'll work with him to come up with systems to meet some of the requirements that would be necessary if we reduce the impervious area a little bit. We would use green infrastructure for that, where it's either vegetated bioswales or some porous pavement to meet some of the comments that were addressed in his letter. So,
Chairman, if I may, since you're talking about the storm pipe, there's another storm pipe centered south of the property that leads diagonally to the southwest. What happens to that? You go back to your survey, you can see it.
Yeah, I believe I know which one you're referring to, so. And which one specifically, we're aware of anything that's over here, we're going to pick up and collect, and if the survey was indeterminate of, correct, this one too would be, so picking that up with the catch basin right now, this per survey and per field conditions is just collecting at the Jefferson intersection. So this catch basin itself will then connect to the new system or the relocated system we're constructing. If this line is found to be collecting anything from, say, the adjacent property that's not ours, we would make accommodations for it. As of right now, it appears to be just that catch basin there, which would tie into our system.
So there's a catch basin in the interior of the property, and that pipe leads to the southwest? Or does that pipe traverse the property?
This pipe traverses the property to terminus unknown in the middle of the property, so.
Mr. Schreiber,
Yes.
did I hear you correctly that you had these conversations with the engineer, the borough engineer, on correcting anything that may be pervious or opposed to impervious? So that's already ongoing, and you're going to correct any or remediate any problems that we may have? Mr. Curto, is that a correct assumption in what is going on down here today?
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Moving on, Mr. Schrager, lighting and landscaping, if that's your next sheet, and again, please identify what sheet you're on.
Lighting and landscaping plan is identified as sheet number 7. And we've provided a plan depicting exterior lighting. Right now, it's 20-foot LED lights that are being proposed. There's 15 of them around the surface parking area. There will be no spillage to the adjacent properties. There was some comments in the review letter. We're happy to rerun the calcs to just show that the calcs don't extend over, but that is, we met that standard to not have spillage. For landscaping, we provided a plan. There was comments there. I know some comments came in even today, but primarily native species that we're using, primarily deer resistant. Some comments about the species that we had chosen. We have no problem working with your planner and engineer to develop a plan to their liking with different species as need be.
So I have to interrupt again. I'm going to ask the same question to the planner. With that correspondence that has taken place, Mr. O'Brien, that he's going to comply with any species that you set forth?
I've heard that. Mr. Cueto has been handling that as part of his report.
Is that another true statement? I mean, when I say true, I'm not, judge and jury. I just want to be sure that what I'm hearing is correct.
Yes,
So
we had that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Schrager, although you're going to continue to work with Mr. Cueto's office on upgrading the species or the spacing or locations, your plans that are before this board and that you're showing to the public this evening do provide the required 50 feet of landscape buffer in the required areas, correct?
Correct, yes.
So what we're talking about is substituting different species that Mr. Cueto's office feel may survive or may have a better aesthetic appearance. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct. Some species, additional plantings, and definitely some species selections, different species selections, yes.
We have a question from Mr.
Yeah, does it notate anywhere on the plans, I'm looking, but I haven't found it yet, like the number of trees that are being planted, the size of the trees, are they,
Yes and no. The yes is that on the plan itself, it does say the abbreviations, like here it says CB, 6 of CB planted here. So on the subsequent page, which would be sheet 8, which is lighting and landscaping plan, again, on the bottom right of this sheet is the landscape schedule. So that talks about the quantity, the botanical name, the common name, and the size that's proposed. So you do have to go back and forth between the sheets, but we depict everything.
So are there mature trees being planted? I'm guessing that's...
Well, you have 3-inch caliper trees, which is pretty sizable.
That's 3-inch at planting.
Yes, that's at the diameter of the tree itself. So that would be a larger size tree, so.
Yeah, that's under large.
No, it's pretty, it's as large as you can get just for a bald and burlap tree to put it on the site, so. I think there was recommendation about getting 10 to 12 foot, or 8 to 10 foot. We're happy to comply with that as well.
Mr. Schrager, I don't know if you're done with your testimony, but you've had a chance to review all of the comments from the reports, correct? I know you've spoken to a number of them this evening.
I have, correct, yes.
And no objections complying with those and your continued discussions with the borough professionals, correct?
Correct, yes.
Anything further?
That's it.
Chairman?
Just, I don't know if he's a very expert for this, but I mean, you show the picture of the trucks that have been parked there. When we talk about the surface, any environmental issue, if there are, you got to
I would speak to that. I can certainly do that at any time you'd like.
Okay, wherever you feel comfortable, wherever you think it should be, and that's fine, as long as they answer.
Absolutely, I'll provide an overview.
Mr. Part of that question was asked by board member Mr. Ladati, so you know.
Thank you, sorry.
No, I understand. Should I answer it now, or should I wait until the witnesses?
I would love for you to answer now since he asked. So.
Absolutely. Let me just refer to my notes. So this site was subject of a NJDEP review back in 1999. Back then, they issued what's called a no further action letter for anyone who's familiar with environmental. They don't issue those anymore, but in 1999, the site did receive an NFA, a no further action letter. Also a deed notice. A deed notice was required to be placed on the property with certain requirements. As part of this development, because of the change in the physical nature of the property, this applicant, this redeveloper, will be required to retain LSRP. For those that aren't familiar, that's a licensed site remediation professional in New Jersey. Those are the individuals that are required to do the analysis, the testing, and report back to the DEP. The DEP doesn't send people out anymore. So this redeveloper will be required, if this project's approved, to hire an LSRP who will follow this process through the end of the build. And once the build is complete, submit his conclusions or her conclusions to the DEP to make sure that the site's been treated properly and that anything that was left over from 1999 has been taken care of. The deed notice that I mentioned from 1999 will have to be updated to reflect the current conditions. The building itself, according to our environmental consultant, will serve as a cap. That cap will secure in any contaminants that may be left. But this has to be done under the oversight of an LSRP. And that LSRP has reporting obligations to the DEP throughout the process of construction and as part of the ultimate occupancy of the building.
Thank you.
But it does have a long...
You okay with that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chairman. I apologize for stepping on you.
No. It's just, this is a beautiful project that we have in front of us. We have to understand it. We have to understand what's going on, and I want to be very, very clear. I want to be transparent. We need to hear, see, feel, and touch this project so we know what we're talking about.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, like I said, the site does have a long history with the DEP since dating back to 1999.
This is for the pond area.
I have a question on the, I hate to make you go back, as far as the storm drainage system. What's the general concept? How's what's the game plan for the storm? What is it supposed to do?
Did everyone hear the question? Did people in the back, did everybody hear that question? Yes. Okay.
And I could just repeat, it's what's the basic premise of the storm sewer design that we have here. So, the first primary was to remove an active storm sewer from the area of construction over here and to upgrade it significantly, because that's been buried under those trucks for many years. So it's bringing that out to convey the water that it was collecting. The second premise is to redo the drainage in this neighborhood, the 3 streets, to just collect the street water, any sheet flood comes off the properties, and get that directly into the system. It all will be going the path it's going today, just in a newer system. and more efficiently, and meeting DEP requirements in terms of if storm sewer grates and items like that. From the site itself, because right now, the argument is that it's an impervious site, we're reducing the level of impervious surface. So that in itself is a drastic benefit to it, reducing it by almost an acre. So then there's more surface area for the water to percolate into the soil. But that's the part that we will work with the board engineer to try to add even more onto that through some green infrastructure to his approval. So
adding some recharge to the system.
Recharge, swales, porous pavement, so there's a toolkit of green infrastructure, and we'll work with that. It's best for the site and accepted by him. So.
In fact, regarding the fire, I don't think we have the benefit of a report that we've been able to review regarding, our fire officials review the site. And it's such a big site, so much different than anything that's within the township. And in recent memory, there's a couple of the Avalon developments that have gone up in, Edgewater, Princeton area, and Big Flame. So that, similar type structures. And I heard the comment regarding the upgraded sprinkler system, but I'm just curious and from the direction we heard from Mr. O'Brien regarding what our job here as board members basically narrowed down to health and safety. So will we be able to hear or make sure, feel comfortable that this thing can be dealt with if something like that happens? Like, it seems like the site is pinned into a corner, and will our guys be comfortable fighting a fire if they ever had an issue? Or the upgraded sprinkler system, are we very confident that that's going to be able to take care of any issues? So, will we get an opportunity?
Well,
I know we said they're going to look at it, but...
Well, I think they said they're going to look at a couple of things. One is a condition that the turning radius for a fire truck, as they spoke about earlier, but I think they did their diligence in upgrading the fire suppression system. By law, they said that this is what they had to do for a building of this character. So I think they went down that pike already. But yes, I think as part of the resolution, maybe that can be talked about at that point. Yes, Mr. Guido.
One of the comments in my letter is that they have to get send this to the health, fire, and police as well. So they'll need their approval.
So it seems to have been covered. I'm going to go to you.
I had a few other questions with it. I was going to wait till some of the other experts spoke to see if something was covered. But being both planning board and fire department, deputy chief of the fire department, with the way this is laid out, very uncomfortable with it. There's no way I don't know how long this building is from where you have access to the back of the property, and how long that is?
I don't right now. We could get that to you and possibly the architect when he comes back could.
25% that's accessible with trucks. And it's a long way to remove the hose and everything else if you do have a fire in the back corners. So, but I was going to wait for other officials, other experts to speak and see if anything else is covered with that first.
So, Mr. Schrager, one of the comments in the report was coordinating the installation of fire hydrants throughout the site wherever the fire department felt would be more beneficial to firefighting capabilities. There's no objection to doing that, is there?
No, we would do that, yes. I know the architect spoke to that, but on the site plan, we will install a fire hydrant where they want.
And to your knowledge, there's no requirement under any regulation that would be applicable to this building to have 360-degree access around the building?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
And are you familiar with other multifamily buildings similar in size to this?
Yes.
Do any of those or do all of those have 360-degree access around the building?
I can't say that they all do. No.
But Chairman, again, this was, something that was thought out as far as access for fire safety. There's no objection to working with the fire department on the turning radiuses, but again, there's no anticipation to remove the 50 feet of landscaping that the redevelopment plan calls for to put in a drive lane for an emergency purpose. That's not part of the proposal.
So I think what I am hearing is that you're going to do just about anything there is to make this a safe environment for the residents that are going to live there. And to Mr. Scuderi's point, it's very important to have that turning radius, and it's very important that this board hears that you took the extra step to find out what the requirements were or are going to be for the additional fire suppression, which would maybe balance out some of that fire truck's ability to get to certain spots. And with the addition of the fire hydrants, it looks to me like some of these things have been addressed but need to go a step further.
Absolutely, and there's no objection to working with the fire department. I just wanted to be clear that there can't be full access around this building. It would be in violation of the redevelopment plan, which Mr. O'Brien would tell you is something that we wouldn't be presenting to this board. So we cannot have a driveway around this entire building.
Well, I would like to hear that. Mr. O'Brien, can you elaborate on that?
The redevelopment plan as written does not make this requirement, Chair. So therefore, it's not a requirement of the zoning ordinance in place. Having said that, Mr. Cueto and our fire department and health department have the opportunity to weigh in on this and discuss improvements with the applicant that they feel would be needed for public health and safety.
Anybody else?
Just one more thing, just to put on the record. The minimum width of the sidewalk and building frontage is going to be 6 feet.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I saw that was unknown, but I think that's now conforming, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So everything on that sheet, right down the list is conforming?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland?
Sure, thank you. I have nothing further for Mr. Schrager. He's confirmed on the record to address their open recommendations and to work with the fire department to come up with solutions that they feel would be additional safety measures that they feel would be important.
Okay. I think you've been, Mr. Mazzio.
Sorry, two other things. As far as the off-site, when we do the repairs to the storm, are there off-site improvements as far as the pavement on the road that are predetermined as far as repairs or replacement, curbing and so forth?
We didn't discuss that. We would agree with your board engineer. We would work with him. I believe he had that comment as well. And I think some of it will be a function of when we detail exactly where the utilities go, that if we have to pave curb to curb and replace the curbing, we're open to that. Yes, we have no objection.
And as far as the crosswalks, they kind of, any potential pedestrians, like we had said, I think, we want to direct the pedestrians up to the boulevard. It's not too far away, but the only issue I see is along 26th Street on either way, the crosswalk and the sidewalk ends there, but then they're going to be competing with full parking. There's not much sidewalk, I guess, to the south on 26th Street. So what's going to happen? They're going to hit the sidewalk and then end up on the street again? Has that been discussed? I don't know, Mr. Cueto?
It's definitely something we will follow up with Mr. Cueto in regards to that, because I do agree that people have definitely taken the liberty of parking, basically building face to halfway out in the street. But at least on that side, the sidewalk is physically there. But we're happy to work with a plan to come up with the best and safest, because some might require no parking requirements and other things to implement. So,
based on the unit number, the amount of units and sizes and the bedroom count, do we know how many children this site will generate? If that's the right way to say it. Is there a number that RSIS uses there? The only reason I'm bringing it up is the same thing. Like, there's going to be kids on the site. The amenities talk about golf simulators and things like that. Are we taking into account any children that might be living there? Number one. And number two is getting them out to the boulevard, getting them out to to school, and that should definitely be a consideration as far as, especially the rest of North 26th Street.
Mr. Mazzi, I have a feeling that maybe the civil engineer wouldn't be able to answer that, but maybe one of Mr. Paparo's other witnesses can help you with that one. Am I correct?
Yeah, we'll circle back to that, but I did want to follow up on that. It's a good question about the sidewalks. Mr. Schrager, the crosswalks are connecting to the sidewalk across the street, correct? There's sidewalk not on our side, not on the building side of North 26, on the opposite side, correct?
Correct, so it's on this side, it continues all the way to Boulevard, yes.
Okay.
Whereas the east side, it does not, so.
And that was the purpose for providing pedestrian access to an existing side?
Right, that's to provide overall pedestrian safety, children and adults, but all pedestrians to at least this point. But again, we have no objection to meeting with the board engineer to discuss.
To your knowledge, there is no sidewalk in this section on our side of the street, is there?
It's an overlap where it's a driveway apron in a lot of areas. The building right adjacent next to it, I think, is even painted like customer parking only. But then there is a grass part where it's gone fully. So the other side has more of a sidewalk and less. And then the east side does have truck bays. So on the other side, it appears to be more just standard vehicles in conflict as opposed to the truck parking on the east side.
In your opinion, providing the crosswalk and the access to an existing sidewalk network, do you feel that that's a more efficient or a more likely way to provide access versus attempting to have private property owners and examine whether or not there's right of way to install a sidewalk?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Mr. Scuderi?
How many on-street parking spots are we eliminating? Because I know a lot of the businesses, employees around that area use the street during the day for parking. So how many spots are getting eliminated with this redevelopment?
I can get back to you with that answer. I mean, essentially what's in the frontage here, which we have the dimension, that would be no longer parking. But right now with the two driveways that exist there and following the state rules, there's probably only 1 or 2 legal spaces in there, so.
They're currently driveways that the tractor trailers use to get into the site, correct?
Correct. I mean, the last 2 days I have not witnessed cars parking on that frontage, at least long term, so.
You're talking about going down from the self-storage to the property itself?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think there's any parking there.
There's cars parked there, whether they're legal or not.
Yeah.
I can't say whether they're legal or not, but there were cars parked there.
Well, I
Don't want to cause a detriment to some of the businesses in the area.
So, Mr. Schrager, there's existing driveways, and you're replacing those with. Is it a like kind exchange? Are you swapping out what's there for what's proposed, or any idea the dimensions, what's there versus what you're proposing?
Yeah, our driveways. Our 24-foot driveway access points, which are shown on sheet 4, and you could overlay to what's on sheet 3, which is the existing conditions. They've shifted slightly, but the width is essentially the same. Yeah.
Thank you. Chairman, I have nothing further for Mr. Schrager.
Does any of the board members or the professionals have anything for this witness? Okay.
No, Chairman.
All right, so I think we need to move on.
I will move to my next witness, our traffic engineer, Joseph Fishinger. Thank you, Mr. Schrager.
Mr. Chairman, should we swear in Ms. Dolan, who did the traffic?
Okay, is she ready?
Let me swear you in, sir. With regard to this application, do you swear your testimony shall be the truth?
I do.
Could you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Joseph Fishinger, Fishinger.
Thank you. Betsy, could you raise your right hand with regard to this application? Do you swear that any traffic comments you may make shall be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Just state your name, please. Spell your last name.
Elizabeth Dolan, D-O-L-A-N.
Thank you. Now, just so I'm clear, Mr. Fishinger is the applicant's traffic expert, and Ms. Dolan is...
The borough's consultant, I believe?
With, working with Christian on that. Okay, thank you.
Let me follow that. Ms. Elizabeth Dolan is working with Harbor Consultants.
Yes.
And you are the traffic expert.
Yes, I'm retained by the applicant.
She is too.
So you're the expert, and so is Christian.
Mr. Fishinger, for the benefit of the board and public, your education, area of expertise, and the licenses you hold.
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Rutgers University. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, as well as 6 other states. I'm also a licensed professional planner in New Jersey and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. Roughly 25 years experience in traffic engineering, and routinely in front of boards either as an applicant or similar to what Ms. Dolan's doing tonight, representing other traffic engineering, representing other boards.
And your licenses are still in good standing?
Yes, they are current.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Fishinger, you and your office prepared a traffic analysis of the proposed redevelopment project, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And that analysis was submitted to the board as part of the application submission, to your knowledge?
Yes, it was dated, the original report was dated October 11th of 2021.
And that is the report that the board has, and the board's consultants have, correct?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, yes it is.
And you're going to be providing your findings after investigating this proposal and the site in question?
Yes, that's right.
You may proceed.
So as I'm sure the board has heard with every traffic engineer, traffic study that comes in front of them, we started with establishing existing conditions. We did traffic counts at Boulevard in North Michigan, Boulevard in 26th, and North Michigan and Federal Ave/Washington Avenue. We did our initial counts on Tuesday, July 20th, from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon. We then looked at counts, obviously that was in the middle of COVID or towards the tail end of COVID. We looked at counts that NJDOT did in 2019 on the boulevard and compared them to our counts, and we found that our numbers were actually in the range of 33% higher than what DOT had recorded in 2019. Because we did our counts in the summer, we also went back on Tuesday, September 14th, and did a check count at Boulevard in North Michigan to compare our numbers over the summer with the numbers that were counted with school in session. And again, our numbers, July numbers, were higher than the ones in September, so we held our July count numbers through our analysis. As far as existing levels of service, as I'm sure all of you go through it every day, Boulevard North Michigan is operating at core levels of service. It's an overall level of service E in the morning and F in the afternoon today. As far as Boulevard and 26, the controlling movement, which is the southbound right turn, that operates at a level of service C in the morning and B in the afternoon. And North Michigan and Federal, the side streets, the stop sign approaches, operated at a level of service E in the morning and an F in the afternoon. Basically, the intersections are at or near capacity. We then looked at the no-build condition, where we expanded traffic for 3 years using NJDOT's recommended growth rate, which is 1% per year for a road such as the Boulevard. We also looked at other developments in the area. We were asked to check into Birchwood Park and confirm that that was fully occupied at the time of our counts. So that established our sort of no-build, what happens if we don't build the project into the future. And as you can imagine, with 3 or a little over 3% growth, the existing levels of service just get a little bit worse. The letter grades don't really change as the delays associated with them start to get worse once we add additional background traffic. Looking at this project specifically, it's 165 units of residential, and when we look at the ITE trip generation estimates, they don't separate out market rates from COA. They're counted as apartments. Our report utilized the 10th edition of the manual. That was what was current when we did our calculations. So the numbers in our report are 15 trips in the morning, 44 trips out for a total of 59 trips for the morning peak hour, and then 45 in and 28 out in the evening peak hour for a total of 73. One of the comments in Ms. Dolan's report was to rerun that with the 11th edition. Between the time we prepared our report and now, the ITE has updated their trip generation estimates, and we'll provide the details to Ms. Dolan on this, but for the morning peak hour, there was no change. The numbers are exactly the same. And in the evening peak hour, the numbers went down slightly, so if we had used the updated numbers, we would have had 5 less trips on the network. So we feel our analysis is conservative as it is, since if we had updated, we'd be projecting a few less trips. As far as where the traffic is coming from and going to, we looked at the existing traffic patterns in the area, the major roadways. So what we assumed was traffic coming southbound towards the site or from the north. That's traffic really destined to and from towards Route 22. We had 25% of the traffic. South on Michigan Avenue, south of the site, was 15%. To the Westland Boulevard was 10%, and the majority, the remaining 50%, we assume was headed to the east towards the Parkway. The majority of the traffic we felt was residential traffic would be oriented to and from the parkways. People need to get to work. With that, we then added that traffic onto the roadway network, and as expected, the levels of service remain around the same. The E's are still E's, the F's get a little bit worse. Then what we also did when we looked at the analysis, I will mention, almost forgot to mention, as far as the driveways to our site, we did also look at them in the build condition, and they operated a level of service A. We made sure that the driveways will operate safely and efficiently. We also looked at what I would consider an as-of-right development. We looked at what could else be built on the site instead of retail if we just follow the existing zoning on the property, and that came out to a roughly 78,000 square foot research and development building, and those trips are slightly higher than what would have been generated by this proposal. That development plan would generate 84 trips in the morning and 87 in the evening. That's versus the 59 and 73 that we looked at for this apartment building. So we also did that, carried through that analysis throughout the entire roadway network, and the as-of-right development in general is a similar level of service, where our development is actually a little bit better than if the theoretical research and development site was placed on the property. One other thing to remember with this, when we did our counts, the existing site was there, it still was operation, you still had the trucks coming in and out. We didn't take any credit for that. We didn't remove any of those volumes from our existing numbers. We just surcharged our traffic on top of it. So keep in mind, we would believe that our estimates are conservative in that regard because we didn't remove the traffic that the site is generating now, those cars and trucks coming in and out. As far as Ms. Dolan's letter, in general, we can comply with any of her requests. There were a few locations where she wanted some additional counts or analysis, and that we'll be happy to provide to her satisfaction. As far as there were a few other minor discrepancies she noted. One was if you add up all the trips going in and out of the site on the figures, you actually get one more trip than we have in the tables. That was a rounding issue. We had half a trip at each driveway, so we just rounded up. So if you add up, we actually have one more trip than ITE says we should have. Other than that, we can go through specific comments that Ms. Dolan has, but we're in agreement to comply with everything in her report.
Thank you, Mr. Fishinger. Before we go to Ms. Dolan, just want to clarify a couple of terms that you used in your testimony. Just semantics sometimes matter. You said as of right, meaning the industrial research and development. I just want to, that would be under the former zoning, correct? The industrial zoning.
Right, that's correct.
This project is as of right because it's zoned for multifamily.
Correct. We looked at the underlying zoning, what could be built if this was not a residential project.
Prior to the adoption of the redevelopment plan?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that on the record when we use as of right. It has some legal significance, so thank you. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Ms. Dolan.
Ms. Dolan?
Sure, thank you. I don't have any specific questions. I think most of my comments have been addressed, and certainly this is a comfortable site plan. As Mr. O'Brien said in the beginning of the meeting, off-site traffic isn't really an issue for this board or this application, but the applicant has studied a considerable amount of the traffic activity in the area, and they've agreed to perform a couple more counts and analyses that I had requested in the hopes that maybe we can enhance the do not block the box that's out there, because while off-site traffic isn't really an issue for this application, both Federal and Jefferson are our access points to this little isolated area of North 26th Street. And so we wanted to work with the applicant to possibly maybe have some more do not block the box and or striping to help identify those intersection areas so that the queues that are developing on Michigan at the signal will allow for movements into and out of the site. And another thing that I talked about with the applicant's traffic consultant is that this is actually a better use for this location because you've got the return inbound trips into Jefferson and Federal in the evening when it's harder to get out of Jefferson and Federal. So the counter activity associated with residential use is actually a better fit for this congested area. So we'll be working with the applicant's team to finalize the analyses, but they've addressed my comments in general.
And with regard to the don't block the box, signing and striping, we're in agreement with that, provided the county concurs, because we would need county approval for anything on their roads.
Well, Ms. Dolan, I'm happy to hear that Mr. Fishinger did a diligent job, and I'm actually even more happy that you concur with that. And one of the biggest things that's going on right now in our town is traffic. This is our gateway, and from what I just heard from you, because I, like everyone else here on this board, know nothing about the trips and in and out, but you have now solidified for me as the board chair that it's better having this 165 units there, in there, than what is currently there now. I think it would be, if I'm hearing you correct, less impact on the community than it's having right now.
That's right, because it's easier to get out of this site location in the morning onto both the boulevard and the Michigan corridors, and then it's easier to get into the site in the evening. So that is better. And I would also point out that the analysis is very conservative. The background growth factor that was used, we're not seeing that all the time. It is the proper thing to do in a traffic study, but it inflates potentially the future volume. So, but in general, it's a conservative assessment, and it's an appropriate evaluation of the situation that is projected.
Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. David?
Yeah, does pedestrian traffic fall into your area of expertise? Because they spoke earlier about a crosswalk that would go across North 26th Street and then try to, I guess, direct them towards the boulevard, as opposed to maybe securing the rights of a sidewalk along the, what would that be, the eastbound side of North 26th Street. So I'm someone who travels that intersection every single day. North 26th Street is a major cut through.
It's a big cut through
for people, and they go fast. They want to get around the light, get onto North Michigan, and head out wherever they're going. So that's number one. If pedestrian traffic is now crossing North 26th Street as people are flying through to cut and beat the light, I'd be concerned for those pedestrians. And then the other thing is, this doesn't really have to do with pedestrian traffic, but hopefully everyone's aware that North 26th Street has no left turn. So when you come out of this complex, you have to go up either Jefferson or Federal to get to North Michigan, and then most likely you're going to want to make lefts across traffic going northbound, which is also going to be a major backup. So those are two things that I'm really concerned about for this project.
With the pedestrian connections, the plan does show the appropriate path, which would be across the street to what sidewalk is available. I've seen a lot of vehicles overhanging into what would be the sidewalk, and I think someone, maybe it was Joe, just mentioned there's aprons and many driveways there. But that would be the appropriate path. Otherwise, the municipality would have to get involved in establishing a sidewalk system outside of their control. They can only control what's on the property. With regard to the pedestrian safety, and again, this would be something that the board and the municipality as a whole would have to consider, is could they possibly make that pedestrian crosswalk across 26th raised in the form of like a speed table or a speed hump, and they could use textured paving or a different type of paver stone or something, so that not only would it be raised, but it would also be a visual change from the blacktop. So that would be something that might help with the cut through and the speed. And then I forgot what the other question.
North 26th Street being a no left.
Right, correct. Yeah, I think residents of this new development would certainly catch on to that very quickly. So yes, you have to go out to Michigan, and that's why we talked about, there is one sign out there that does say do not block intersection, but you could have better signage, and then also there's a hatching pattern that goes with that, again, it's a visual striping, cross-hatch striping that would be on the pavement, and it does help the vehicles to sort of identify and stay behind that location, and then that facilitates gaps, particularly during the evening peak hour. I think morning is a little easier getting out, but particularly during the evening, that would be an enhancement.
Yeah, I mean, that comes to the point of you need enforcement.
Well, that's...
Because I also travel through Garwood almost daily, and they have that type of system to protect the entranceway into their ambulance or rescue squad building, and no one respects it. They always block, so that if God forbid there were an issue where the rescue squad needed to get their ambulances out, it's blocked. So again, drivers don't respect striped lines that say don't block this.
Some of them do.
Having the striping there is better than nothing at all.
Well, I agree with that. Anyway, I respect it, I can tell you that much, but...
Right, and then like you said, if those types of things do become an enforcement issue.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the county would entertain, for example, a speed table on North Michigan. That would be...
I highly doubt the county would agree to speed tables. The don't block the box striping, I'm pretty confident they would agree to. I've done that with them in other towns where we make the request and they approve it. The one thing with regard to a raised crosswalk or a speed table or something at that point, we will need to confer with your fire and EMS as well, because that is something that they'll need to weigh in to make sure that it's not going, while it will slow vehicles down, it also slows fire trucks and ambulances down. So that's something we'd have to work with your fire and EMS departments to make sure that they're in agreement with it before we start putting in a raised crosswalk or something along those lines.
Mr. Pantina?
I just want to, question goes to this crowd right here with Greg's cut-through traffic. And, the speed table sounds good, or a raised crosswalk or whatever, but possibly, if we were to go with that, or if we were to require them to do that, maybe putting in, what do they call them, flashing crosswalk signs on either side of the speed table, because it is a cut through, and they're going to fly through the raised crosswalks just like they do in Westfield. They're used to it. They know we can't do it. We can do it at 25. We can do it at 35, and we can't do it at 45. But and so maybe like the lights, because we got the lights on the boulevard now anyway. So maybe that could help. I don't know.
But it also comes down to somewhat of a policing issue. There's going to be a new trend going on. I know myself when I'm traveling down the Parkway, when I get down to that certain area at 110, I back it down because I know the police are sitting right there. So we get comfortable with certain things, and change. So we have to look at it from that perspective as well.
But you are introducing crosswalk, or forget about the raised crosswalk in general.
Yeah.
You're introducing something new now.
Yeah.
I'm now a target for cut through.
Wow. It's something that's necessary though.
Yeah.
Right? Mr. Scuderi.
Again, all this talk with the crosswalk, it is going to across the street to somewhere where there's no sidewalks. I mean, I'm familiar with the area until you get up to Wrigley, that's all parking, it's all press curving.
No, but just to be clear, it's actually connecting to the existing sidewalk. Let me just, I'm sorry, I apologize. I
don't know who's going first here, I'm sorry.
There's no sidewalk pretty much from there till you get up to almost to the boulevard. It's all paved, it's press curving.
That's correct. That's correct.
And it's all parking for those businesses.
Right.
So it's pretty much going.
I'm trying to go in order here. So who is next? Who had their hand up? I think Mr. Mazzio.
Mr. Mazzio had it.
Well, I just, back to the box that we're talking about, just to be clear, are we talking about the intersection of Federal and Michigan and Washington? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
And that would take Washington into account as well?
Yes, yes. And the additional analyses that I asked for and counts were specifically to identify some of the left turn volume onto Washington versus the left turn into the site and make sure there's not going to be a conflict there. So we'll be working with the applicant's team to review that, but again, too, it would be subject to the county.
So let's reiterate a little bit too. Ms. Dolan already testified to the fact that by doing what we're doing, there's less impact than if we don't do it. So at some point, we need to take other precautions in order to make it safer. But I build playgrounds for a living. I can only go so far with safety, and then it's the responsibility of others to exercise in that safety. Mr. O'Brien?
Chairman, a couple of things, if I may. A question was raised about raising the sidewalk or having a table there. They can be broken up in such a way that fire trucks can traverse them without having to go up.
I don't think it's an issue with fire trucks and ambulances. They're getting extreme anyway.
Okay.
I don't think it's really an issue.
It's a short run there anyway.
But if needed,
Unless you got extreme with the hump, which probably wouldn't do, it would be fine.
As Mr. Patina said, the lighting can be placed on a raised sidewalk, much like on Broad Street in Westfield. There's two locations there. It can be either pedestrian activated or motion activated. As for the sidewalk on the west side of North 26th Street, I just looked at the Google Earth pictures of that, and comments are correct in that between the back of La Briglia on 26th and Jefferson, there is tarmac for the most part. The vehicles are supposed to be parked in the right-of-way, okay, away from the fronts of those buildings. And in fact, recent applications to the borough for improvements along that area have removed the parking spaces from those businesses there that were sitting in the right-of-way and not on the street bed. But what might help the situation would be if a striped pavement were laid out along that tarmac from Jefferson to the back of La Briglia to indicate a clear pathway. So it would be a striped sidewalk done by signage rather than by different concrete or something like that. And that might be an answer to the sidewalk. And I did see on the Google Earth, and I know that was done last summer, somebody's got a dumpster in that area, and our code enforcement could certainly take care of that.
Right, well, that goes back to saying that right now, what's going on down there is not good. People are just doing whatever they want. But now with this development and the upgrading of our town, there's going to have to be more policing, more monitoring, and get those cars off of there. That's now a crosswalk, that's a hatched area where people and pedestrians are going to walk. So they're going to have to follow those rules.
And in addition to that, Chairman, there are no parking restrictions along the east side of 26th. There's no signage there restricting parking in any way. So the only parking spaces that would be removed are those of the driveways. And one of the driveways is already, the two driveways are already there. So I see that under one to be reinforced by the engineer, but I see minimal removal of parking.
Mr. Ladati?
Yeah, question for Mr. Fisher. First of all, thanks for the conservative approach and not using the low-end numbers, so that was really good. But you mentioned the traffic, that current traffic from the tractor trailers now. You gave us a number, or can you give us a number what the traffic's like from the tractor trailers, or the traffic going in and out of that site now?
We didn't count it specifically. What I said was we didn't take any, we didn't,
I know you didn't use it in your calculation.
right, we didn't take it out of our future conditions. So whatever traffic is generating now, we carried that forward through all of our analysis, even though it obviously won't be there at construction because trucks won't be.
You know that number? Or
I don't have that exact number of how many trucks are coming in and out now.
There's going to be less traffic, well, there's going to be current, with your figure show, there's going to be that, the tractor trailer traffic going in and out is not going to be there, right?
I would expect not. There would be nowhere for them to go.
Right, exactly.
Mr. O'Brien?
To that point, Mr. Ladani, over the many years I've worked for the borough, I've had an eye on that place just because it's there. And I have noted that the trucks that are parked there are parked for indeterminate times. Some are in and out on a daily basis, some are there for days. I've seen others there for long-term storage.
Exactly.
So how active that really is, I can't tell you.
Okay.
But it's not like the truck terminal up on 78, they're in, they're out, boom, boom, boom. There are trucks here for long periods of time.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Maparo?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Fishinger. Our final witness this evening is John McDonough, our professional planner. Thank you, Ms. Dolan.
You're the applicant. The applicant.
This is your final witness?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Chairman, to save time, I've worked with Mr. McDonough in many communities. He is well respected in the field, licensed professional planner, recognized by many boards. As long as his license is current, I recommend it to the board.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
I agree, although
It's good enough for me.
I have my doubts, but
It's literally,
if you could raise
there goes that.
raise your right hand, John. With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Just for the record, John, state your name, spell your last name.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John McDonough. It's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH, and I'm the project planner.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The floor, John.
Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Paparo.
That's okay, thank you. And Mr. McDonough, as a professional planner, you're also a landscape architect, correct? By license? I know you have some exhibits. You've analyzed the site from a planning perspective, and you're prepared this evening to provide your findings as a professional planner, correct?
That is correct. I brought placemats for all you guys.
And how many sheets are in this?
There's 7 in there.
Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to mark this 7-sheet packet as a...
6, I believe.
A6?
Yes.
I'm sure there'll be enough for out there too. And they're really photographs of the surrounding property, so if you live here, you know the area.
There's a bunch up here, yeah. All these trees.
The Dottie going?
No, I can share with you. I'm good.
We have more.
Mr. McDonough, thank you for bringing so many copies.
Thank you for being prepared.
Thank you. Take it away, Joe. You want to
Give it a shot.
Okay, so it's the job of the planner. You've heard a lot of details about the plan that's before you, how it stacks up with the redevelopment plan and the planning goals of the community. I'll take it a step further. We're going to look at how the development before you integrates with the physical characteristic of the site and the surrounding land use context. We're going to take it back to the redevelopment plan and the goals of the redevelopment plan as well. A6 is a series of maps and photographs. It's going to give you some orientation, some context. I know we're all familiar with the site, so we'll go relatively quickly. We'll start with the simple, we'll work to some more detailed information, and then again, we'll take it back to how it stacks up with your redevelopment plan. But first page is a single tax lot. We're looking at block 183, lot number 9. It's about 3.7 acres. It's got excellent carrying capacity to accommodate the mass and scale of the development that's before you. It's got a nice regular shape to it. There's nothing really irregular about this piece of property. So right off the bat, we just have some good geometry to work with, and I think our applicant has done a good job of fitting within the confines of that geometry.
Are we going to rename the street?
I was gonna say, this is Kenilworth, not Jersey City.
Kennedy Boulevard. Our guys in Hudson County tonight. Here you go. All right, we're going to put this exhibit away. Okay, second sheet just shows the physical characteristic of the property in question, which you know was developed industrial. You can see all the trucks that are parking there. This is a property that has been identified by the community as a problem. I'm not sure how much you've used the redevelopment tool. I think reading the planning letter, this might be the first one. But this is a great tool to effectuate positive transformation, positive change in the community, and eliminate problem sites. This site has been found to meet the statutory criteria for designation as an area in need of redevelopment, and this redevelopment plan cures that problem. And of course, we have a developer here that is ready, willing, and able to fully comply with the requirements of that redevelopment plan. We'll come back to what that means, not only from a practical standpoint, but from a legal standpoint as well, as we consider this from a planning standpoint. The other thing about this property, not only was its former use, but the condition of the property. It's cleared, it's flat, it's ideally suited to accommodate redevelopment and the mass and scale of the development that's before you. You can also see it's 100% paved over right now. The applicant is going to come back and substantially green up this site here with 25% of greenery to provide a nice green belt around the perimeter of the property. That goes towards your environmental goals, that goes towards your aesthetic goals as well. So a nice, I'll say, biomass coming around to frame this development. Also, very nice integration with the golf course and that expansive green space that you have there. You saw the beautiful architectural plans and that courtyard. Again, nice interaction with what's going on here and what's going on with the land use that's immediately across. Third frame just simply shows the surrounding land use context. We have this mix of uses in the area. You've got the residential uses out in Michigan. You've got the golf course, the subject site being vacant, land used primarily for storage of vehicles, and again, a mix of industrial and commercial uses as well. Fourth slide shows the zoning of the area. We've got a chunk of industrial, we've got the park. The yellow area has now been designated as its own zone, as its own zone district here. A very good redevelopment plan, by the way. There are actually 75 pages of regulatory controls in there, so it's a very detailed redevelopment plan, which really protects the community in terms of development done right. And again, importantly, we go back to our developer, has met all of those 75 pages of controls here. So I don't see 75-page redevelopment plans very often, so kudos to the town in that regard and to our developer in meeting that as well. So the fifth page is what we saw when we went on the property about a week or so ago. Again, you get a sense from this vantage point, I'll say looking to the northeast, the expansive green space and how this is going to effectuate a positive integration with that nice green belt around the property, and sort of a continuum of what's happening on the other side there in the background. And of course, taking what's going on there now, giving people a place to live, which is a good thing as well, not only for I'll say market rate people, but for all people. This is going to be an inclusionary development, and I think it's laudable, novel, and noble that this also includes veterans housing as part of that affordable mix, which is rare, and again, certainly laudable here. We just pan back a little bit in the next page number 6, to show the surrounding land use context. And again, your beautiful landscape here, that beautiful view in the background. We didn't get it on the best day, but I'm sure the people who live here will be able to capture and celebrate those beautiful views of Manhattan that you see in the background here. And that should be celebrated and captured, and that's why I think the applicant has done a good job framing that green space and pointing outward towards that skyline in the background. And then finally, on page number 7, is just a top-down view, very similar to what you see in the existing condition exhibit that's already been entered. This is just more recent vintage to give a sense of the utilization of the site as we saw it back on March 2nd. So again, we take this back to your 75-page redevelopment plan, the 25 North 26th Street redevelopment plan. This application, as you've heard, is in full conformance with all of those requirements. We start with all of those higher tiers of zoning. From a use standpoint, multifamily residential inclusionary housing is a permitted use in this zone district. The intensity of use controls and your massing controls, the density, the building height, the building coverage, floor area, the building location in terms of the setbacks on all sides complies. And then, of course, as you just heard, the parking supply will not only meet the demand, but meet the ordinance requirement as well. And then you have a plethora of design standards as well related to parking and parking lot landscaping, traffic, circulation, architecture, landscape, streetscape, landscape architecture, sustainability. You have a lot of green elements that are cooked into this plan as well, which the applicant is going to comply with. And then, of course, all of those outside regulatory requirements, ADA, UHAC, the affordability controls are all being met here as well. That said, from a very practical standpoint, this project is not only going to effectuate the goals of the redevelopment plan, there are 13 in there. They are all consistent with the core purposes of planning that's articulated in both our redevelopment law, reversing stagnation and underutilized pieces of property, but also promoting positive development here in your community. And this is going to be a premium place for people to live, highly amenitized, and again, just a really beautiful, comfortable living environment. Project positives, we've got a number of pillars of planning that are going to be promoted here, including redevelopment. That's a core goal in a state where we recognize, and your own master plan recognizes, land is a scarce resource here in the state of New Jersey. We don't have any more. So we take these sites that have already been developed, some of them have outlived their useful life, we repurpose them, we bring them, we contemporize them, which is exactly what the applicant is doing here. And importantly, redevelopment is the planning tool that transforms these problem sites. And that's been a finding not only by the community, but the New Jersey DCA as well. They have signed off on this redevelopment designation. Affordable housing, again, not only just saying you're going to provide it, but providing a realistic opportunity. We have a developer here, a redeveloper that is ready, willing, and able to contribute to that obligation to provide for affordable housing. Again, including that laudable provision of veterans housing as well, which often gets forgotten in our redevelopment plans and our affordable housing plans. There's going to be the environmental benefit, taking this 100% covered over site adding 20%, 25% green space, and new modern sustainability elements as well. And of course, we've got new housing stock here. Much of the housing stock here in the community is older, so it's important to constantly replenish with fresh housing stock, and that's exactly what our applicant is doing. Many of the buildings here, the homes that were built here, predate building codes, so we now have much more stringent standards that are being met by the development before you, and again, many layers of control here that new housing gets the benefit of that the older housing doesn't have. Of course, some of the traditional planning goals: efficient land use, redevelopment, repurposing land that's already been disturbed, variety of land uses in appropriate locations. It is a planning goal to provide for a variety of housing types. Our developer here has done a good job of mixing up the unit count. We've got 1 bedrooms, we've got 2 bedrooms, we've got affordable 1s, 2s, and 3s. There's a lot of choice here that's put into the redevelopment plan as well. And then, of course, the positive aesthetic, that beautiful plan that our architect put forth is certainly a drastic change from what you see on the property presently. This promotes not only the image and the identity of the site, but the community as a whole, as a progressive community, a community that looks forward, and again, provides housing for all people, which is another planning positive. With respect to negatives, again, we don't have to apply the balancing here. This is not a variance application where we look at the benefits of the application and we balance them against the negatives. But notwithstanding that, based on all the testimony on the record, this site will flow, function, and operate safely and efficiently in accordance with sound design, engineering, and planning standards. This is going to certainly integrate very well into the landform that's there and the landscape that's there and the surrounding land uses as well. So no substantially adverse impacts to the surrounding public, to the surrounding neighborhood, and certainly no substantial impact to the intent and purpose of your redevelopment plan, of your master plan as well. Your redevelopment plan has been found to be consistent with your master plan, and the redevelopment plan, again, echoes all of those positives that I just talked about in terms of new housing, redevelopment, repurposing these vacant and underutilized pieces of property. So again, a substantial nexus with the master plan. Again, the master plan recognizes scarcity of land and the need to use this redevelopment plan. Finally, the legal basis, and I only say this because I lived the case. It was a case out in Randolph known as the Pizzo-Manton case. We went through hearing after hearing after hearing with subdivision. After fully conforming, the board, at the end of 30-some-odd hearings, said, it still doesn't feel right. We think it's not consistent with good planning, and they denied the application. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that's not the way we're supposed to zone, it's not the way we're supposed to plan. The essence of good planning is rooted right here in your zoning ordinance, and the Supreme Court, our highest court, said it. If it complies, it's good planning. So with that, I'd offer that this application clearly, by virtue of the fact that it does meet all of the requirements of the redevelopment plan, is consistent with good planning and does warrant approval. So in conclusion, again, kudos to the town, kudos to your professionals. It's a really good plan, and kudos to our applicant back there for fully complying. I think this is a win-win for everyone, and certainly warrants the criteria for approval.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Just a few follow-ups, just for the record. The photos that are in your packet, those were taken by you in your office?
These were taken by my office, not me, though. I can't fly that thing.
They're drone photos, correct?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, does accurately reflect the images portrayed?
Yes, they do.
Have they been doctored or altered in any way?
They have not.
Thank you. Mr. McDonough, there was a question earlier in the testimony, in the hearing about school-age children. You have extensive experience and history with multifamily that includes affordable housing, correct?
Yes.
Can you respond, and again, you haven't been tasked to do a financial impact statement for this application where that kind of information is usually gleaned, but do you have some historical knowledge based on your experience for a multifamily development of this size to answer the question about, potential school-age children?
The good news from a school impact standpoint is these type of developments, especially which are so heavy on the one-bedroom count, are conducive to non-families, particularly school-age children. So if the question was related to the 5 to 18-year-olds, it's going to be incredibly low. I would say about 15. But when I heard the question, I ran the numbers out there. We have a demographic study that was last concluded by Rutgers in 2018. So we've got some good, fresh data. And it's nice, too, because it's New Jersey-centric. They studied about 20,000 housing developments here and actually counted the kids. And it came out to, again, based on the multipliers here, it's based on the bedroom count, about 15 or so. And most come from the affordable component, not the market component. We have veterans housing here. That may skew the numbers even more down. I'm not sure. Rutgers doesn't have a separate breakout for that.
Thank you. I can confer with Mr. McDonough's comments. They would have been mine.
Okay. I can't imagine if anybody has a question for this gentleman, because he's a wealth of knowledge, but Mr. David, go ahead.
Mr. McDonough, were you involved with the landscaping part of the application?
I am a landscape architect.
I heard you say that.
I did not design the landscape plan, but I looked at it, I like the way the project has been laid out, and if there's an opportunity for embellishment, I think I heard we'll work with your professionals.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm kind of harping on this. When I look at this rendering here, and I look at the trees and whatnot that are shown around the building, and then I hear 3-inch saplings are going to be planted, it's not this.
We'll get it right.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. McDonough? Mr. McDonough, you or Ms. Donough?
You can say it any way you want. McDonough is...
Does anybody have any questions for John? Seeing none. Mr. Paparo, are you done with your witnesses?
We have no further witnesses, Chairman. I would just reserve the opportunity to make a closing statement after the public gets a chance to speak.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out there. It is 9:45, and I'm thinking that I would entertain a 5-minute recess, especially for people that are over 60. If that's okay, would someone make a motion to recess and back in 5?
So
moved by Mr. David, second by Mr. Menestrello. All in favor? Just we get everybody. Is everybody think out of the men's and ladies' rooms? I guess. Okay. Okay. Someone want to make a motion to open the meeting? Motion made by Mr. Menestrello, seconded by Mr. DeMondo. I don't know why. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So we just wrapped up with Mr. Dolan. Is Mr. Paparo here? McDonough. I mean, Mr. Dolan. I'm sorry. That's what happens after I take a recess.
That's okay. We'll call worse.
You'll never do my traffic report again. We just wrapped up with Mr. McDonough. Mr. Paparo.
Chairman, board members, Mr. McDonough concluded with our planning testimony in support of the application this evening. We have no further witnesses, so we would yield the floor to the board and the public for public comment. I would just reserve the right after public comment to make a final closing statement.
Okay. I guess we're going to go right to the public now. I don't think this board needs to discuss anything at this point. I guess we'll look for a motion to open this floor to the public. Motion made by Mr. Menestrello, seconded by Mr. Scuderi. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record.
Good evening, everyone. Robert Herbert, 14 North Park Street. I'm sure our professionals probably looked into this, but I am concerned with a few issues, or I'd like to make a few suggestions when and if you guys vote to pass on it, to add it into the resolution. If anybody looked at the width of Jefferson, 26th Street, and Federal, again, from us all living here, we know when we travel or cut through those streets, if another car is coming another direction, you know, the traffic stops. You have to pull over and let the other car go through. So
Did you say the width on Jefferson, Federal, and what?
26th Street.
And 26th, okay.
Right. 26th Street really doesn't have any parking. Federal has no parking. People do park there, hanging the right of way, hanging on the road. Jefferson has parking on one side. But anytime a car is coming the opposite direction, nobody could just go very slow and pass each other. You have to really merge and let somebody pass. So, you know, with 165 units, not that 165 units are going to be exited at the same time, but, you know, the flow of, you know, daily basis, different hours, people going out.
You know, Bob, on the lighter side of things, you just brought a thought to me. You like when the plumber inspector has to go there and he has to flush all the toilets at the same time. I'd love to know when that really happes, you know?
It doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. But I'm just saying, during rush hour, turning down on Michigan Avenue, left or right.
Right.
You know, coming home out to the boulevard, that backs all the way up past
Kennedy Boulevard.
You know, Vital, and in the morning going out to 22, it backs all the way up to Jersey landscaping, you know. And it's a short period of time, but it makes it difficult to get in and out. You know, it's not going to stop the project, but in my opinion, it's one of the negative things, you know. But the positive outweighs the negative. Regarding safety and health, I'm just curious on the structure design. Is it going to be stick-built? Is it a mixture of steel and aluminum? And the base floors, each floor, you know, the pad, is that all going to be plywood? Is it going to be concrete? Is it going to be decking material with precast flooring? On the safety end, if it's all stick-built, and these TGIs and things like that, like, you know, some of the single-family homes built, I know it meets code, but, you know, for the fire department, you know, when those things are built like that, they don't go inside, they fire, you know, they fight everything from the outside, not inside.
Does the chair want that question answered by the applicant?
Well, we can, but I think we already know the answers. I think Mr. Herbert already knows the answer to those questions, because after a certain elevation, then you have to go into metal and steel, and you stick build 3 floors and down. But, you know, these things, Mr. Herbert, with respect, they've already been explored, they've already been approved, but we can get you those answers. If you want those answers, we'll get you those answers right now.
Well, I'm just curious, because I wasn't privy to it, you know, and then long-term, you know, I think the concrete, when you have a water leak or an overflow of a toilet or a pipe breaking or, you know, any form of water, long-term, the concrete would be more friendlier than having mold than a plywood floor, you know, as a base, you know, that's all. Some of the other things I'm concerned with the landscaping outside and the curbing, instead of the curbing being vertical in the flow of traffic, especially the path where the fire trucks are going to be, I feel it should be on a 45. So when our first responders rush to an emergency situation and, you know, they're rushing, they don't ride up over a curb. When they're on a 45, it's a little easier to go by. You know, they can ride over it. And we have to be concerned with our trees and our lights, that the fire trucks and emergency vehicles can make that turn without, you know, hitting a branch or catching a light pole, which I'm sure our professionals did look into that. But I just want to put my input in and comment on that. You know, to definitely take close consideration into that for our fire department and their equipment, and not to delay anything, you know, on their emergency response. Let's see. Oh, my other question is, and I don't know if it's the board's decision or if I have to ask the mayor and council, once this is developed and completed, who's going to be monitoring the tenants, that they meet the, all the state requirements and the redevelopment plan with, who's living there.
We can get you that answer. What I was waiting to do is I'm making a list of your questions, and then we're going to go to the right people, so we don't have with respect, a 15, 20-minute, half-hour dialogue back and forth. We'll just answer each one of your questions.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll get you that answer.
Alrighty. And that's pretty much it, I wanted, I guess, to clear up the decking material in between each floor, listed as a substance. What substance is going to be on each deck?
All good questions, Mr. Herbert. Let me see how I can help you out right now.
All right. Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Caparo?
Yep, I'm on it.
You have the list, or would you like me to?
I do, I think, and if not, you can add to it. Thank you, Mr. Herbert. So for the construction, I've confirmed with the architect and the developer, concrete podium, and then it's 3 floors above our frame. The sprinkler system was upgraded.
You say, excuse me, Mr. Herbert, frame stick built or metal stud? Okay, all stick built for 3 floors.
The first floor deck is all concrete, and then above that is the 3 floors of stick. As mentioned before, the sprinkler system was upgraded from the typical residential to the upgraded, correct? Yeah. There's an upgraded sprinkler system that's almost, is it a commercial grade? Is that what? 13, okay. The next question about the affordables. The affordable units are required to be administered by an agent. We're required under the redevelopment agreement to have an affordable housing administrator who works through the county. There's lists, and not to get in the weeds too much on it, but affordable housing is done throughout the state by region. It's not just Kenilworth, and it's not just Union County. There's regions that are established, and there's lists, waiting lists that are generated. The administrator is required to make sure that every individual meets the income levels that are required in the redevelopment plan, and that those units, those 25 units, are occupied by individuals that meet the income levels and that are on the lists that are provided, and that's administered by an agent, and not, it's not by the developer himself. There's an agent that does that.
And that's updated every year.
Correct. I was going to say something else. Oh, again, the agent would be responsible for making sure that their veterans' preference is enforced. So it's not the developer, it's the agent would make sure that the veterans' preference for those affordable units is followed. So those are the two.
No, 45-degree angle curbs for easeability for trucks to come in and out. They would be on the bias, more or less.
We don't have an objection. That doesn't, as long as the board engineer, thinks that that's a wise idea, we'll defer to the engineer.
Yeah, depending on the set that we're going to be doing for the trucks, they might need to do 45.
Okay. So that's a good option.
No objection to that request.
There's no objection to that
As long as your engineer says it's okay. I know Mr. Herbert mentioned it, but I really like Mr. Cueto to weigh in on it. But if he thinks it's an important aspect, we would have no objection.
Okay. And he also asked about the width of Jefferson, Federal, and 26th, I believe, Robert?
Yes. And I think that was actually a good discussion that everyone had this evening, and I think Ms. Dolan actually started that discussion about whether or not the parking that's happening out there is the most appropriate. So I think, if this can be, if and when this development is built, if approved, hopefully that, influx of activity will help the enforcement. And Chairman, I think you mentioned it as well about really enhancing what's happening out there, because right now, I think in someone's words, it's a free-for-all. So that will change with, this kind of an investment into that site. So we're happy to work with the police department. Our leasing, the developer's leasing agent will be on site 24/7 to help with enforcement, and if the police need to be called for illegal parking or anything that's happening, the developer will certainly work with the borough police department on that.
Perfect. I think you've answered all the questions. Mr. Herbert, do you have another one?
Well, I mentioned it, and I was wondering if we can address it, that, we're going to carefully look at the type of trees. If there's islands in the parking lot where, emergency vehicles will circulate, that it's a tree that doesn't branch out in a wide umbrella, that more goes straight, and the lights are high enough, so when that 48-foot truck with the room in the front doesn't catch a light and cause another issue, why are they responding to a fire?
Well, I think they, not as explicitly as you just explained, but I think they covered that the trees would be sized appropriately, different species of trees to accommodate those conditions. Am I right, Mr. Paparo?
Yes, Chairman, and even further than that, we already anticipate having a subsequent discussion with the deputy fire chief, and we would be happy for him to weigh in on the types of plantings or the height of those plantings or poles when we're talking about overall safety. So we can add that to our agenda with the deputy fire chief.
Good. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening.
I remember you. Just state your name again for the record.
Sure. John Zimmerman, 26 North 7th Street, Kenilworth.
Okay.
Good evening, planning board. There's 165 units and 316 parking spaces. Now, my question is, ground units will have garages, as far as I've learned tonight. Is that correct?
Chairman, want me to answer right away?
What I want to try to avoid, Mr. Paparo, is a dialogue going back and forth. Mr. Zimmerman, with respect, I'd like you to ask your questions.
Okay.
We're going to write them down, and then the professionals, whoever is here, will answer the questions for you, okay? So you want to know if there are garages for the balance of those cars, correct?
The ground floor units of the housing development, do they have garages? I imagine. I haven't seen.
There are no ground floor units. It's all parking at the...
It's all parking at the...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Exactly. Okay. So then it's 4 floors above the ground where the cars park.
3 above.
3 above. Okay.
And that's why they're stick building.
Okay. Now, my question is, going to those garages, is there a parking space past the garage for another car? Or is it just the garage parking and the street is directly in front of the garages? Is there an extra spot for the people who purchase a garage space?
No.
Okay. Now, another question I have is, there is going to be 316 parking spaces, according to what we have learned before, and there's 165 units. Now, that's 165 units times 2 cars. You got to plan on 2 cars per...
Mr. Zimmerman, there's a calculation that is set forth that tells us how many cars per unit per household. It's not necessarily 2 cars. It could be as crazy as a car and a half.
Okay.
So that's how the calculation is actually determined.
Okay.
So in hindsight, I know everybody says, oh, everybody has 2 cars these days, but it's not calculated that way.
Okay.
Am I correct, Mr. Paparo?
You are, Chairman. Well, anyway, my question is, 2 cars equals 330 cars. And there's not 330 parking spaces in there. And there's no parking on the street for extra cars in that neighborhood. There's all businesses there with driveways. There are no extra parking spaces.
To answer your question, Mr. Zimmerman, the amount of dwellings that are there meet the criteria for parking.
Okay.
So
There's 5 spaces in excess of what's required.
Right.
So they're a little bit over what they require.
Okay. Now,
We can do.
the ground floor of the buildings, there's parking spaces. And the 3 floors above it, somebody's going to get those ground parking spaces. Now, how about storage units? Is there anything within this plan for storage units for all those 165 units? Or are they going to take their stuff to the nearest storage place, which is up the street, and spend $40 or $50 a month?
It's right there, right?
What? Yeah, it's right there. Okay? Okay. Another problem is, we're going to need a crossing guard at the Boulevard in Michigan Avenue. There's never been a crossing guard there, and guess what? The taxpayers are going to pay for it. Okay? And I don't know whether if it's far enough from the school for school bus service. So and another question I have is 29,000 square feet of grass space in front of the apartments. I don't know how much 29,000 square feet, it sounds like a heck of a lot, but I'd like to know what that is in size by footage. Does anybody have that answer? Thank you.
It is, 29,000 square feet is footage.
No, I mean, is it 50 by 100, is it 50 by 50?
More than half an acre.
Yeah, 29,000 is, more than an acre. 3/4 of an acre.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty good size.
Mr. Zimmerman, thank you very much.
Oh, by the way, is there storage areas?
Is there storage areas? I didn't hear any on the plan. I didn't hear any.
No.
No, there's no storage areas. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Well, I think there's somebody coming behind you.
Go ahead, you want to go a little bit?
Go ahead, yeah, come on, I think you, well,
You were.
he's gonna be one.
He's talking, man. I don't want to. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Joseph Rizzo, 212 North 21st Street. Looking at the site plan, what is the required buffer around the property? 50. 50?
It's complied with.
Yes.
The one portion is 6 feet?
That's the sidewalk.
The sidewalk?
Right, that was the sidewalks that was 6 feet.
All the buffers and setbacks comply with.
They are 50, okay, because that's why I just looked at it during the break.
I was confused.
That's what I was confused about, I just looked at it very quickly. Wasn't sure what that was compared to the redevelopment one. And the other question I had was as far as the environmental, we were told that the DEP issued the letter that there was no further action required.
Who told you that?
That was in 1999, I think.
When you said we were told, I'm sorry, Mr. Rizzo.
No, I'm sorry, yeah, during testimony.
Okay.
The December 22nd, 1999, DEP issued a restricted no further action for the pond area. It's because there was a pond that was on site when there was the steel company there that was contaminated, that was filled in. So the no further action letter was to the pond area. So according to the redevelopment plan that we have from Barber Consultants, the only environmental investigation was something that was done back in 1999 and 2012, 10 years ago.
Oh, we'll ask the site buyer to address that.
So just to put into perspective, if a contractor wants to develop a property in town, they have to do a test pit. And that's just for one unit. But for this, that's 2 years in the making, 165 units, 3.79 acres, which equates to almost 170,000 square feet. No test pits have been done. No EIS statement has been submitted to the board, as far as I know. For something of this magnitude, the board doesn't feel that the developer is required to submit something as far as what's there. And anyone that's been around heavy trucks or machinery, I'm sure, can tell you, there's been spillage, there's been environmental issues, and although we don't have any proof of it, with the cars cars were parked there for 12 years, so back from 2000, so 22 years there's been cars, old tractor trailers, in and out, but the board doesn't feel anything is required as far as environmental studies.
Well, the board never said that your statement, we never said that. What we listened was to the testimony, but I did also hear, Mr. Rizzo, that there would be an LSRP on the site for any type of remediation. But I would like to hear from Mr. Paparo so he could address that in a more professional manner.
Do you want me to wait until Mr. Rizzo's done?
Well, that was it, yeah.
I think that's the crux.
I just wasn't sure about the buffer and the environmental.
No, I can address both. Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. The buffer, just to get clarity on that. So the redevelopment plan requires 50-foot buffer on 3 of the sides. The side that abuts the golf course is a 6-foot buffer, and that's the 6-foot that you heard referenced. So it does comply, and there is a 6-foot buffer. Those two things can happen at the same time.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So the redevelopment plan requires 50-foot buffers along 3 sides of the building.
Oh, just 3 sides, okay.
The back that abuts the golf course is the setback is 6 feet. That's a requirement because it abuts the golf course, and that's where the building's been set.
Are there any overhangs on that side with the structure?
No.
Okay.
The environmental, let me just respond to the environmental. So the NFA was a site-wide NFA. That was the first thing from 1999. But regarding Mr. Rizzo's statement that nothing's been done, that's not correct. The developer had an environmental analysis done by an environmental consultant that included test pits. It was done in 2019 at the outset of this process. And the result of those tests that were done by the environmental consultant was such that established the program that I described to you earlier, which is if this project moves forward with the construction, an LSRP needs to be on site to monitor any type of remnant contamination, if there is any, and the LSRP has to provide the results to the DEP.
Inclusive of air monitoring?
Everything that, and as I said before, one of the proposals is to have the building itself, once it's constructed, serve as the cap for any remaining contaminants. But I wanted to respond that this developer, who I think the testimony, there was no testimony this evening, but it was a $45 million investment, wouldn't be doing that based off of a 1999 environmental report. There's been environmental studies done by this applicant on his own.
I didn't see any, that's why I was...
They're not public, that's why. We don't have to share those with you or anyone else. They have to be shared with the LSRP.
Okay.
So I hope I responded, Chairman, to that.
Yeah, that's why I asked you to come up here.
Yep, I think I have. Okay, I think that's it.
Mr. Rizzo, anything else?
No, if the board's satisfied with that, that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? It's your turn, come on.
I'm Greg Marukian. I'm 147 North Michigan Avenue. That's Precision Escalator Products. I want to thank the town for all the years. I've been here 23 years, always been very helpful. I'm just a little concerned that this is, I have an industrial warehouse and my neighbors are industrial. I have trucks going in and out. I'm just concerned that when you have residents there, they're going to be saying, hey, I'm looking outside my window and I see some trucks, and it's not going to look as nice as that picture. I wish it would, but it's not. So what happens then?
I don't understand, really, I don't understand the question. Are you making a statement or are you asking me a question?
I'm making a statement. I have an industrial warehouse, and you're putting a residential building next to me, and it's good for the town. I'm very happy about that, but I'm concerned for my own.
I can appreciate that.
My own business, and as much as everyone says, oh, they know they're going to be next to a residential place, there's always going to be one person complaining.
Sorry?
You've been there, you were there first.
Yeah.
And anyone who rents an apartment overlooking your property and later is surprised by the fact that trucks go in and out, I don't think it's going to have too much of a leg to stand on. What are they going to say? I mean, they bought it knowing that.
Is your question leading to, will you be pushed out of your area?
I just want to establish that I'm there first, that where it's an industrial warehouse, and I'm concerned.
So down on Monroe Street or in those areas where there is a tin knocker places and people have residents there, the tin knocker has been there for 100 years and they built houses there. And then, of course, it's the same thing. It's not the tin knocker that's complaining, it's the residents that says, hey, I can hear that metal all night long. But it's kind of like what it is. Yeah, it's a shared space, let's call it. The units are going to be there, you are going to be there, and nobody's going to ask you to leave.
Will there be any, Joe, will there be any No. Joe, will there be any buffering on that side? I know it's...
Yeah, he's got
Yes. That was, the 50.
Well, I meant like landscaping. Certainly someone on the top floor is going to be able to see
They're
it.
gonna, yeah, the third story will certainly be able to see
Okay.
this property.
Okay, you understand. I would think
Not
it's...
just my property, all the property.
Well, I would think it's the applicant's problem more than yours. You're there. You're not going anywhere, and they're building a project next to you.
There's no place to go.
They're building a project next to you, and that's the way it is.
Okay. Anything else?
No, just want to say thanks for what's
Thank
going
you.
on that one. Just,
I'm sorry?
if I could throw something in on that. Just-
Yeah, but can you speak up, Mr. Magic? I can't hear you.
Well, I was involved with the development of one of the similar apartment complex where the developer was right up against the Johns Manson plan. And what the township required was that the developer for apartments just have a...
Gentlemen, can we keep the conversations down because we can't hear through the audio, please?
There's a Johns
Thank
Manson
you.
plan right across the street, and you're renting right across the street for it. Be aware of it. And everyone either, whether they rented or they bought in the development, had to sign off.
There's got to be full disclosure.
Yeah.
The realtor needs to, whoever's going to market the properties will do that. I mean, they have to. It's an industrial area surrounding it.
Chairman, and for Mr. Baruchian's benefit, it's an excellent point, and that is how it's handled. The ownership would have that in their lease. They have no objection to putting that notification in their lease that we're moving into an industrial area or something.
Good point. Good point.
With a county park on the side.
Okay, thank you. You gotta leave the mic, you can't take the mic.
He's doing Sinatra to
Yeah, when somebody... Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Mr. Herbert?
Bring in the clowns.
I just have one more question.
Okay.
Do I have to go up and go through the whole?
You have to do it, Mr. Herbert, so we can hear you and everything, we have minutes, we have recordings.
Rules made to be broken?
Yes.
Okay.
Like the microphone?
14 North 12th Street. My last question.
Yes.
That I thought of, I apologize, I didn't write it down before, was the amount of units and the runoff from the roof of this building is going to increase our flow rates. And my question is those additional flow rates, is the developer going to absorb that cost? Is that in the agreement? Or that additional flow rates, is that going to be shared from all the taxpayers in the town?
I don't know if that's a question for this board, but I guess, sorry?
Aaron Schrager should be able to...
Flow rates?
Right.
Mr. O'Hara should be able to answer that.
Who's that?
Mr. Paparo.
Mr. Paparo, can you answer that? I don't want to not answer a question if I could help it tonight.
I'm sorry, I was still conversing with Mr. Baruchian. Can you just repeat the question?
Robert?
Sure.
Flow rates, something?
Yeah, flow rates, we're going to be, we're always struggling with flow rates in the town and going to your...
Flow rates?
Way back.
Rolling Valley Sewage Authority flow rates.
Sanitary, water runoff,
They're going to have to apply for a TWA. They're going to have to go through RBSA before they go to DEP. But everything that they're going to have to go and get approval from all these entities prior to build.
Right, what I'm saying, I'm not sure what TWA stands for, or whatever, it's an airline. But what I'm saying is he going, if we have to buy additional flow rates, is that going to be shared from all the taxpayers, or the developer's going to buy the additional flow rates? Is that in our agreement, or has this been discussed? Because, we spent a lot of money over the last couple of years with cameras and leakage, and Rolling Valley wanted to, fine us because of excess water. So I'm just concerned, is the taxpayer going to absorb the additional, or is the developer willing to absorb that cost?
Chairman, I would love to be able to answer that, but I have no understanding of how there's a cost associated with the RBSA.
I haven't done one in a while, but when there's a new development, you need RVSA approval, there's
There's a sewer connection fee that the developer has. That answers your question. There will be a sewer connection fee based on the number of units and the output, and that's always the developer's loss.
And the RVSA will confirm capacity as well, so.
And so will Mr. Coyle as the borough engineer, or the board engineer, or Mr. Gallarano, someone will confirm our calculations for the TWA. And the rate and the volume, and that's what RVSA utilizes for determining the sewer connection fee, correct?
Yes.
I have that. Right. So to answer your question, that would be our
It's not gonna be
connection
cheap.
fee. Absolutely.
And Mr. O'Brien, just, if you don't mind, add to that, I saw you're nodding your head agreeing that, that's how it's going to go. It's not going to be passed on to the taxpayers, the developer's going to pay that.
The developer's responsible. It does not be more than that.
Okay.
No,
That was my
but sewer flow rates are built into our tax rate.
So they have to pay it.
As part of their normal property taxes.
Correct.
Yes. To my knowledge, the only property owner that purchased their own flow rates was Sharing Plow, who may have now passed those on to Merck.
Which they would have had to.
But otherwise, all flow rates are paid for by the borough, and they are built into our property taxes. Some towns have separate sewer authorities which charge their residents for sewer charges. That's not how Kenilworth does it. So the property owner will pay for their sewer usage as part of their normal property taxes.
Okay. But for the first 30 years, are they paying property tax? They're not, right?
I don't know what the financial.
That's not for this, board. Robert, thank you very much.
I understand.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Mr. Rizzo, you back?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, if that's okay.
Sure. That's what we're here.
You guys wouldn't mind indulging me. Just for the, just looking for a little bit of background for the LSRP program, just how that, I still can't get over the environmental aspect of the site being a major development and the board not requiring any environmental statements. So just a little bit of background, just for
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. So
Just a disclaimer, I'm not an environmental attorney. There are environmental attorneys in my group that I've consulted on behalf of the developer with for this. So the LSRP program, as I stated earlier, is a licensed site remediation professional who's licensed to do the analysis and work with a property owner if there is contaminants that need to be remediated. The investigation is done by the LSRP, and the LSRP has to certify to the DEP that the property has been cleaned in accordance with the requirements. So think of the LSRP as a private DEP because the DEP just gave up on it years ago. So those results from the environmental consultant for this project will have to supply to the LSRP. The LSRP will have to sign off and certify on his license or her license.
But they're not required to.
Yes, they are. They absolutely are.
Well, when does the town get it?
We can't get a building permit until it's clean. If there is any contaminants that this isn't the first, time that a project's been built that had.
We don't make a decision whether the property's clean or not, that's done.
So, let me just interject. The question at hand is from Mr. Rizzo, how could this board allow this project if there was no either test pits or if we knew or don't know about contaminants in the soil?
Any type of environmental stuff.
And any type of environmental. But the testimony was from Mr. Paparo that the applicant in 2019 took those steps, and what he's also stating that when this project comes to fruition, there'll be an LSRP to monitor those specific problems that may occur, and those problems will be remedied at that point. So I understand the concern, but I think it's been addressed.
Let me ask the chairman a question, Mr. Chairman. Can the board require as a condition that we obtain sufficient evidence that the land can be developed without contamination? I think that should be a condition of our resolution should we approve it.
It's already built into the process because your Board of Health will require a copy of our RAO, or remedial action outcome. That is what the finality of what the LSRP certifies to the DEP. It results in an RAO, and we have to supply your Board of Health with an RAO before we can get a building permit.
They can't build without that in place.
But I understand.
I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with us putting a condition into our resolution.
We can ask for it, and when you have the information, you give it to us, and then it goes forward.
No objection to doing that.
So,
I didn't want the appearance that we could somehow get a building permit without demonstrating that we've done everything we're supposed to do.
there's many builders in this room, and we all know that. So we can't go forward without that paperwork. Anyone else? I think you had another question?
Yeah, just another question, just when they,
Can you come up, please, so we can hear you properly? And you need to speak into the microphone.
just on the runoff, I'd like to see how it affects my property, maybe I could look at it when they're done.
I'm sure this developer, Mr. Paparo, his professionals will give you any information. Let me state this. When a project like this is coming into fruition, these gentlemen and gentlemen like them are taking every precaution to make sure that there's no water runoff onto another person's property. So they will give you that information.
I am concerned only because over the years, Neary put a lot of dirt on his property, he raised it. And it caused a lot of flooding in it's in the back of my building, it doesn't affect my building, but affects my property. I just want to make sure that, I see how they're going to do this.
Mr. Paparo?
Yeah, we can certainly supply no objections, supply Mr. Marukian with a copy of our final drainage plan, or even the sign off from Mr. Coito, because his office has to sign off to make sure one of his review tasks is to make sure we don't have any adverse impact on any neighbors. So if Mr. Marukian would like, we can, when Mr. Coito's office issues a review letter, we can supply Mr. Marukian.
I'm fine with that.
I think he wants that microphone. Okay. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, can we have...
Motion closed.
Motion made by Mr. Ladati, seconded by Mr. Venestrella. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So...
I have one final question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Paparo, although testimony said that all the comments would be taken care of in both of our reports.
Yes.
One of my points was a question, which has not been addressed, and that is, where will the flagpole go?
Good question. Thank you for reminding us. I was going to say wherever you like, but that's dangerous. I don't want to say that. So we will work with you if there's a location that you feel is appropriate. The applicant has no objection.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, one question from Mr. Carr.
Yes.
I forgot to put this in the report, but since you guys are doing the pre-divorce application, obviously a water extension permit is also required as well, might be required as well.
Okay.
You have no objection to doing that.
No. Water extension and permit?
And supply a cost estimate as well for bond.
That's no problem.
Anything else for you?
I was just going to give, if we're done with the public, I was going to give a very brief closing statement. I know it's getting late.
Take all the time you want.
I won't do that.
All the time you want.
Chairman, board members, members of the public, thank you. Everyone, thank you for your attention and your consideration this evening. To your board professionals, thank you as well for your diligent reviews and your guidance throughout the process. We appreciate it. This has been quite a partnership and a journey with the borough on this first redevelopment project in the borough. In our minds, it's a momentous occasion to bring a project like this to the borough of Kenilworth. You saw the testimony, you heard the testimony, and saw the exhibits this evening. Quality finishes, quality building. The applicant has agreed to work with your professionals, the fire department, to come up with some solutions to some open questions that they may have. This will bring, again, the housing units that are in much need to the borough. We've complied with the redevelopment plan. We've honored the spirit and intent of the redevelopment plan. We've taken every step to ensure that this is a quality product and project for the borough of Kenilworth. And we just wanted to again thank you, board members, thank the public for their input throughout the process. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Barr. At this point, I would like to hear from any of the board members that have any input at all about what we heard tonight. So with the face that I just saw Mr. David make, there is
Nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay. Well, let me say this. As far as I'm concerned, I heard all the testimony. I haven't seen an application as clean as this in a long time. Right down the line, everything is in compliance. There are no variances, no waivers, no hardships, nothing. And I find this to be a premier project. And I, for one, am very, very happy that this project is going to be in our town. The way it was presented, it was in layman's terms so that we all understood it. We weren't sidetracked by anything. And I think there should be a motion to approve this application. So I'm asking someone to make that motion.
That we approve application 390.
I will take that motion from Mr. Venestrella. He will make the motion and will be seconded by Mr. Ladati. And roll call, please.
Mr. Paserno?
Yes.
Mr. Fenestrella?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Hold on. Do we have a...
Yeah, I mean, we didn't touch on conditions, any of that stuff before we're moving.
Can I reiterate? I think the conditions were set forth between the Mr. Paparo's team and our team.
Right, but usually our attorney outlines the conditions that we are going to build into the resolution.
We could do that. I thought there
We
was
should
just
do
a...
that before we start.
Let me tell you what I have, and Kevin, if I miss something, you can forward something to me.
We could do that. Good pickup, Mr. David.
Yeah, there's a lot of give and take, as Greg said, between the applicant working with our consultants. I had all the exteriors, the 4 exteriors are going to have the same finishes, in terms of the products that we...
Yeah, but that's not a condition, that was in the plan.
Correct, but it was noted that that's what we want, and that's what's in the plan, that's what we want. No objection to the board consultants' reports. The landscape plan, we want a variety of trees and species, et cetera. They were going to work with Kevin on that. One of the most important issues was the LSRP. Will be retained by the applicant, will be on site, will work with the DEP, and provide the DEP with what they need to assist the applicant and us in making certain that site's clean and buildable.
You may want to add, Mr. Ragland, the borough share communications regarding environmental affairs with the board.
Okay, that's fine. The report...
We receive all those reports.
All right. The traffic report, I think it was indicated that the traffic report from Ms. Dolan will be complied with. Full disclosure in the leases regarding the surrounding property, flagpole location, wherever the borough feels like it would like it. That's what I have. A lot of it's in the plans already, or if not, it will be discussed and resolved between Kevin, Betsy.
The curbing.
I had something here about
45-degree angle curbing.
Oh, was that what we decided on?
So
I know Bob
we didn't
mentioned
decide on it. Yeah, if needed. Right. They were going to look at the curbs, the fire lane, and if it's necessary, they'll put it. If it's not, okay.
We're talking mountable curbs. That's the normal. Yeah.
Yeah, consultation with the fire department.
You got that little consultation?
Mountable curbs. consult with fire department.
That was included in Christian's letter.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a comment in my
Yeah,
letter.
a lot of it's already in the report, so I will reference that, and the applicants agreed to comply with all that, so with fire department.
You can put down a year's supply of porterhouse steaks, he agreed to everything.
I saw that in there, yeah. And Kevin, we talked about sharing environmental information with the borough.
From the borough to us, because the borough
Oh,
will
yeah.
be receiving all reports.
Got it.
And I put the case of Bouchelet in my report.
So we're binding, in our conditions, we're binding the borough.
Yeah. Requesting the borough.
Requesting. Okay. And that's what I have. And then our normal conditions, and if anything else, if Kevin comes up with anything else that he thinks should be in there, or Chris, I'm sure they'll reach out to me.
Well, you can't put a condition after we vote, right? Because it's either a condition now or it's not. Everything that's in the reports is part of this hearing, and that's what goes into your conditions.
Then put in the water extension permit and cost estimate as well, then, because that wasn't mine.
Yeah, Craig had mentioned the curbs. I had sidewalks, curbs, work with our engineer regarding repairs, et cetera.
Yeah.
I need to think about the on-site, the curbs, and the sidewalks adjacent to the property. Or,
Yeah, I don't know how that.
I don't know how far out we can go from that. Given off.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
I don't want to do off-site.
You can request that the applicant study it and discuss it with the borough engineer, and if they are agreeable, and if feasible, perhaps they would consider it.
It's an off-site, okay.
Off track.
It is an off-site, yeah.
It'll be required on-site, obviously, but off-site if agreeable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless Mr. Paparo wants to agree now. To strike the sidewalk on the north side on the west side of 26 out to the boulevard.
No objection.
So it's up to the, you got it now? So what do we got here? Let me see.
Kenilworth Boulevard, by
What was that? From the site, from the site out to?
From the crosswalk out to the boulevard.
Kennedy Boulevard. From
New Jersey set.
from crosswalk to boulevard. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
I'll send you a draft of the res when I have finished finalizing Kevin.
This is how we're going to do this now, okay? So the motion that was made by gentlemen in the rear. The motion that was made by Mr. Fenestrella will include the conditions that you're going to read off right now, and the condition, not the conditions, and the information that was sent to Mr. Paparo from Harbor Consultants and Mr. O'Brien, inclusive of the traffic report. And that's what we're going to hear right now. When he recites that, that's how we'll proceed. How's that?
Well, okay, we have the two reports that the chairman mentioned. What is in there, the applicant has agreed to do. We also have what we talked about before, the LSRP on-site, having to confirm with the DEP that the site's built clean and buildable, and the board has requested that the borough send us any communications in that regard. There's going to be enhanced sprinklers with regard to the fire lane. That can't be built all the way around per the redevelopment plan.
Consultation with the fire department.
Right. Landscape plan. The applicant will work with you on a landscape plan.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
With borough staff,
Yep. Sidewalks and curbs. They will make repairs of sidewalks and curbs on-site, off-site, from the crosswalk on
the west side of North 26.
to the boulevard.
From the crosswalk to the sidewalk emanating from the boulevard.
Okay. Betsy Dolan's report regarding traffic. the full disclosures in the lease regarding awareness of the industrial area, and I'll spruce up that language a little bit. Mountable curbs, consult with the fire department, the borough, and a request that the borough send us whatever environmental information that they receive. That's what I have. And then we have our normal conditions. You pay your taxes. If you have to get any other permits that are required from any other agency, if there's any major changes to the plan that we haven't looked at, they may have to come back. If something's going on that's going to cause something to be built in a different way, they need to come back to us. So the normal conditions that we find in all of our resolutions. And that's it.
Okay. You sure? You don't want to have a condition that he owes you a legal pad?
I could do that. I could do that.
Okay.
You are harsh tonight.
I gotta tell you, it's almost 11 o'clock. So the motion that we just said was made by Mr. Minestrone, was seconded by Mr. Ladati. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paterno?
Yes.
Mr. Finestrella?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Konecki?
Yes.
Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Colella?
Yes.
And Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Very good. Congratulations. Mr. Paparo?
Thank you so much, Chairman, board members. Thank you, everyone.
Before you guys get up and leave, please, can we just have order in this place one more time, one more minute, because I have something to say to Mr. Paparo. Mr. Paparo, you put together a class act. All your witnesses, from the developer to the engineer to the traffic, everything. You made it clear, you made it understandable, and you made it enjoyable. I didn't mind sitting here listening. I very much enjoyed, where is he? Ilya Koryakin back there, Mr. McDonough. You remind me of your Ilya Koryakin. McDonough. Whatever his name is. But I have to say, on a serious note, when something is presented in such detail, and you take the time to do it, this is no easy task to get this to our board. There's been some resistance out here, but you've met the challenges. I think you clarified explicitly all the thoughts and the comments that I thought I was going to hear tonight, but I didn't hear them from members of the public because you explained yourself well. And I think people are now starting to recognize that this is a plus, 5-star operation, and I really appreciate it putting forward. And Mr. Cody, thank you for coming to our town. Thank you for beautifying it, and good luck with your project.
Thank you. Chairman, on behalf of the applicant, thank you for the kind words. It was a pleasure presenting to this audience and to the board, and again, thank you to your consultants for their work and guidance. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move forward real quick at this point. Comments for the good of the board? You don't have anything? Okay. Have a motion to open the meeting to the public? So moved. Moved by Ms. David, second by Mr. Bishop, all in favor? Aye. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Okay, motion to close the public portion of the meeting? Motion made by Mr. Davis, second by Mr. Pantina, all in favor? Adjourned by Mr. David, second by Mr. Scuderi. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thank you.